Chapter 320. Yi Guchen, who was sitting cross-legged in the golden whirlpool of waves, opened his eyes. In an instant, huge waves surged into the sky and roared like an angry dragon. His eyes, which were as dark as night, flashed with a greenish-gold light. At the same time, Yi Guchen's body shone with light. The light was not the pure golden color of the invincible Vajra body. Instead, there was a hint of greenish gold in the golden color. I finally understand. The path after the invincible Vajra body is the flawless body. Yi Guchen's eyes lit up. Previously, when Yi Guchen used the invincible Vajra body, the light that appeared was golden. This was the golden body, also known as the invincible body. It could fight against spiritual inscription weapons. After the refinement of the golden body potion and his own understanding, Yi Guchen gradually understood the path ahead. After the golden body was the azurite body. The azurite body was also known as the flawless body. Now, even with the refinement of the golden body potion, Yi Guchen could not transform into the flawless body in a short time. It required a process. The flawless body had no flaws or flaws. It was like a perfect whole body. If he attained a flawless body, Yi Guchen would be able to fight against a dermic pattern divine weapon with just his physical body alone. Besides, the flawless body's characteristics made Yi Guchen's body like a whole body. It was difficult to find any flaws. Even some of the sharp mystical rune divine weapons that could break through his defense were unable to penetrate his physical body. This was the flawless Vajra body. However, the cultivation of the flawless body is more difficult than the invincible body. It can't be achieved overnight. Even this ball of golden body potion is only an opportunity for me to achieve the flawless body. There is still a long way to go before I can master it. Yi Guchen was enlightened. His invincible body had already started to transform into the flawless body. Yi Guchen felt that his body was tougher and stronger than before. Now, even though he had not broken through to the unblemished body, he could resist the attack of any divine weapon with spiritual inscriptions with his physical body alone. At the same time, the golden body liquid in Yi Guchen's body had also decreased by half. However, Yi Guchen's veins, bones, muscles, and even his internal organs seemed to be covered in a layer of green light. Yi Guchen's current physical condition was several times stronger than before. The foundation of the physical body is like forging a sword. It also needs to be tempered, and the golden body elixir is a supplementary item, Yi Guchen thought. But no matter what, Yi Guchen's physical body had become much stronger. It was incomparable to before. Is Xian Hao guarding outside, or has he already left? However, it doesn't matter. I will make a complete breakthrough here. Yi Guchen's eyes lit up with a fiery glow. Yi Guchen had been waiting for too long since the shocking battle in the infinite wasteland plains. Although he did not care about the disdain and cold eyes of others, the oppressive feeling made Yi Guchen somewhat unhappy. He did not want to rely on anyone's strength, even the blood cloud centipede. When I make a breakthrough, no one can stop me. Just as Yi Guchen was about to take out the two heavenly thunder and prepare to make a breakthrough, a message from Zither Fairy suddenly came from his communication jade slip. Young Master Yi, the situation is not good. The stone bridge where Mu Xingzu is has been surrounded by all the disciples of the forces who have entered the Void Sword realm. What? Yi Guchen's eyes suddenly flashed with a cold light. For a moment, the surrounding waves surged. Almost immediately after, Ji Ling, Chu Qingqi, and the others also sent news. The news of the stone bridge had been completely leaked. At present, Mu Xingzu was in a very dangerous situation. After all, in the face of such a great opportunity, almost no one could restrain the greed in their hearts. As for Mu Xingzu, she was like a little lamb surrounded by a pack of wolves. She was in a precarious situation. If I'm not wrong, it should be Pan Xuelian and the other three. At the thought of this, Yi Guchen's face seemed to be frozen. The surrounding temperature between heaven and earth seemed to have dropped a lot. It's less than 7 days before the Void Sword realm closes. If I make a breakthrough at this time, even if I succeed, I'm afraid it's almost time. And by then, Mu Xingzu would have been killed by everyone. Although Senior Ying Ning gave the inheritance to Mu Xingzu, Without the immortal soul pearl, her strength will be greatly reduced and she will enter a period of weakness. It will be difficult for her to use powerful means, and if I don't make a breakthrough and go straight to... Yi Guchen's eyes revealed a thoughtful look. Any rational person would make the right choice in such a situation. Make a breakthrough first and then go. With Yi Guchen's long accumulated foundation, his breakthrough this time was no small matter. As long as he made a breakthrough, even God's favored sons like Xian Hao could not do anything to him. But if I choose to make a breakthrough, Mu Xingzu's safety is uncertain. Yi Guchen's eyes flashed. He never thought of himself as a person with a temperament. On the contrary, Yi Guchen's character was very indifferent. Besides the sword, there were too few people and things that could move him. Even Mu Xingzu, at first, was just a casual promise from Yi Guchen to teach her swordsmanship. He did not really intend to take Mu Xingzu as his disciple. But, I, Yi Guchen, am not a saint, but if you want me to make a breakthrough here in peace and put Mu Xingzu in danger, I can't do it either. Boom! There was a deafening roar, and the surrounding golden waves spread out. Yi Guchen stood up directly, and his eyes were like swords that wanted to split the sky. At this moment, he did not care about his own cultivation, nor did he care about the final result. He only wanted to be calm and use the sword in his hand to get rid of all injustice. You'd better pray that Mu Xingzu is fine, or else. Yi Guchen paused, and it was as if thousands of miles of ice had frozen the ocean. Don't blame the sword demon for being merciless. At the stone bridge. It was located at the most remote place in the void sword realm, and the void turbulence surged in the sky. Originally, there were few people here, but now, endless noise surged in all directions. The densely packed heads were like a swarm of ants, gathered here and surrounded the stone bridge. On the other side of the stone bridge, in the barren mountains, a vigorous wave was emitted continuously. While the wave was shocking, it also made everyone's eyes turn scarlet like a wild beast's. No one could resist the great creation of an immortal soul expert. That wave is indeed extraordinary. On the limitless sword sect's side, a large group of people, led by Xian Hao, occupied a territory. Behind Xian Hao, Murong Ditian, Xian Mo, Xian Ying, and the rest were all present. After feeling the wave in the barren mountains, even Xian Hao's eyes flashed with a blazing light. The three royal palaces' disciples, led by Little Flame Emperor Ji Yan, were also present. Ji Yan's mouth carried a faint playful smile, and he exchanged glances with the other three not far away. On the Saint Origin Academy's side, the young Marquis Fangchen and Prince Yuanyi were present. The Consonant's divine palaces Pan Shuelyan and Zither Fairy were also present, but the two of them were very far away from each other. In addition, the sealed saber royal palaces Nieling, Mo Juechen, Shinta Miao, and even the 7th and 10th on the heavenly saber list, Zhou Yen and Yen Kuan, were all present. The 9 profound sects group, led by Chen Yi and by Yenji, were also present. As for the sword sect's forest of pagodas, it was vaguely divided into 2 groups. One group was led by Bai Zichen, Wang Xiaotian, Li Lingxiao, and the other top 10 disciples of the inner yard. The other group was led by Ji Ling, Yi Guchen, Chu Qingqi, and the rest. This group of disciples had all received favors from Yi Guchen and were on his side. At the stone bridge, all the factions and elites were gathered here. Among them, most of them only had one goal, and that was to snatch Mu Xingzu's creation as an immortal soul expert. Chapter 321. Rumble. Waves of powerful vibrations came from the barren mountain. Not only were the vibrations shocking, but they also made people jealous. Among the many figures who were surrounded, the ones who were the most jealous were Pan Shuelyan, Ji Yan, Fang Chen, and Prince Yuanyi. After all, they were the first to know about this place, just like Zither Fairy and the others. In Pan Shuelyan and the others' hearts, this great opportunity should belong to them. But now, this opportunity was snatched away by Mu Xingzu, a mere Qi refinement realm martial artist. How could Pan Shuelyan and the others not feel aggrieved and angry? It was also because of this that Pan Shuelyan and the others were like this. They would not let Mu Xingzu receive the opportunity in peace even if they had to reveal this place. If I, Pan Shuelian, can't get the opportunity, no one can. Mu Xingzu, if you come out, you will be torn apart by this group of jealous people. Pan Shuelian's lips curled into a smug smile, but her eyes were filled with resentment. On the other side, Ji Yan, Fang Qin, Prince Yuanyi, and the others were considering whether it was possible to snatch the opportunity from Mu Xingzu. After all, they did not want to give up such an opportunity. Do you think Yi Guqin will come to save this girl? Prince Yuanyi pondered. Unless he is a fool, he should know that with the opportunities he obtained in the Sword Pavilion and Pill Hall, even if he comes here, he will only end up like Mu Xingzu. Fang Qin said coldly. That's right. Yi Guqin should not be that foolish. He should run as far as he can now and think of a way to escape when the Void Sword realm closes. Prince Yuanyi shook his head with a smile. He obviously thought that he was overthinking. Although he really wanted Yi Guqin to walk right into his trap, it was obviously impossible for him to do so. On the other side of the inner yard, Ji Ling and the others had a trace of anxiety in their eyes. No matter what, Mu Xingzu was still an inner court disciple. Ji Ling naturally couldn't allow herself to remain uninvolved. I've already told Brother Yi about this place, but to be honest, I advised him not to come here. Chu Qingqi sighed softly. Sigh, I know. Yi Guqin's fortuitous encounter is similarly coveted by others. It's normal for him not to come. If he comes, not only will he not be able to save Mu Xingzu, he will also be sacrificing himself. Ji Ling shook her head. She did not blame Yi Guqin. She even hoped that Yi Guqin would not come. It would be great if Shuang was here. If she was here, she would definitely be able to control the situation. Even Xian Hao wouldn't go too far. Ji Ling sighed in her heart as she thought of the valiant figure in the ice silk skirt armor. If they were in the inner courtyard, Ji Ling, Bai Zichen, Wang Xiaotian, and the others would still have some weight. However, if they were in the 7 great factions, the only one who could truly intimidate others and make others feel apprehensive was Yan Wushuang. This was also the reason why Yan Wushuang was so cold and aloof. In the inner yard, no one of the same generation could stand shoulder to shoulder with her. As for Bai Zichen, he did not have the slightest bit of camaraderie towards Mu Xingzu. In fact, he was also somewhat envious of Mu Xingzu's fortuitous encounter. Why are those great fortuitous encounters either obtained by Yi Guqin or the people around him? How can I be willing to accept this? Bai Zichen's expression was solemn. If there was a chance, he would definitely take action. As for the other factions, they all had different thoughts. But as expected, they were all waiting for the final moment to compete for the fortuitous encounter. At this moment, in the cave dwelling in the barren mountain, the inheritance was about to come to an end. Mu Xingzu sat cross-legged on a futon in an aqua-green dress. Behind her, Ying Ning's figure was already somewhat illusory. However, with her eyes closed, Mu Xingzu's aura had already reached the Divine Soul Realm. Not only had she just stepped into the Divine Soul Realm, but her fluctuation had already reached the 4th transformation of the Divine Soul Realm. To Mu Xingzu, this was a great fortuitous encounter that could change her fate. Not only that, in addition to the advancement of her cultivation realm, Mu Xingzu also obtained the Soul Sword Essence inheritance. As the soul fluctuation in her mind spread, the sharp sword essence also seemed to spread in all directions along with the fluctuation. The most important immortal soul pearl was about to completely take root in Mu Xingzu's sea of consciousness. Boom! At a certain moment, the immortal soul pearl completely integrated into Mu Xingzu's sea of consciousness. Mu Xingzu opened her watery eyes. At the same time, a vast soul fluctuation almost uncontrollably erupted from her sea of consciousness, shaking the entire barren mountain. You succeeded. Ying Ning's voice was somewhat weak. Just as Mu Xingzu's pretty face lit up with joy, she saw Ying Ning's delicate body gradually turn transparent. Senior Ying Ning, what's wrong? Mu Xingzu panicked, her beautiful face turning pale. It's nothing. I just used up too much energy. My primordial spirit will soon enter the heavenly sea soul marrow to sleep. It may take some time before I can wake up. Now, many people have gathered at the periphery of this place. Ying Ning's expression was slightly solemn. What? Mu Xingzu gritted her teeth. Although it was somewhat unexpected, Her face did not reveal the slightest bit of fear. The barrier at the periphery of the barren mountain can still hold on for a while. You should consolidate your cultivation. Perhaps you'll have a chance to escape. I want to help you, but... Ying Ning's voice grew weaker and her figure became fainter. Senior Ying Ning, quickly enter it. Mu Xingzu held the heavenly sea soul marrow pendant in her hand. Ying Ning shook her head helplessly and her primordial spirit entered it. After hanging the pendant properly, Mu Xingzu clenched her fists and walked out of the cave. At this moment, the crowd waiting anxiously at the periphery suddenly realized that the fluctuations in the barren mountain had calmed down. What's going on? Has the inheritance ended? Just as the crowd was puzzled, Mu Xingzu's elegant and delicate figure walked out of the cave in the barren mountain. It's Mu Xingzu. She's come out. Look at her aura. She's in the divine soul realm, and not just any ordinary divine soul realm. She's at least in the fourth transformation of the divine soul realm. She must have obtained great fortune. Otherwise, it's impossible for her to directly leap from the Qi refinement realm to the fourth transformation of the divine soul realm. The moment Mu Xingzu appeared, almost everyone's eyes turned red instantly, as if a hungry wolf had encountered its prey. Even Xianhao's breathing quickened slightly because he felt the power in Mu Xingzu's body. Mu Xingzu has inherited sword intent. Xianhao sighed. What? Sword intent? Xianhao's words caused an uproar. The already red eyes turned even redder, as if they wanted to tear Mu Xingzu's body apart. Mu Xingzu, what did you obtain? Pan Shuelyan swayed her hips as she walked out, her face filled with resentment. Mu Xingzu looked at the densely packed crowd. Even though she had a strong heart, she was still a young girl. Her face was slightly pale, but she still gritted her teeth and didn't retreat. Mu Xingzu, hand over the fortune you obtained and we might spare your life. The little flame emperor of the 3 imperial palaces, Ji Yan, walked out with a face filled with jealousy and hatred. Mu Xingzu, I hope you know what's good for you. Actually, I don't want to be ruthless. Prince Yuanyi and Fang Chen walked out. You're not worthy of this fortune. A group of people from the saber-sealing monarch palace stepped out. What are you doing? Mu Xingzu is a member of the inner court. Who dares to attack her? Ji Ling's delicate figure flashed as she took a step forward. Behind her, Chu Qingqi, Yi Xie, and the other inner court disciples also stepped out. You may think so, but the others in the inner court might not think so. Prince Yuanyi's tone was playful as he looked at Bai Zichen and the others. Fortune is destined by the heavens. It belongs to whoever can snatch it, Bai Zichen said indifferently. Bai Zichen? Ji Ling clenched her teeth. If the inner court wasn't united, how could they suppress the other factions? Back off. If Yan Wushuang was here, her words might carry some weight. However, you'd better be tactful. Xianhao took a step forward as the aura of the 9 transformations of the divine soul gushed out, forcing Ji Ling and the others to retreat. Mu Xingzu clenched her fists when she felt the greedy gazes of the people outside. This fortune was passed down to me by a senior at a great price. Mu Xingzu, won't give it to anyone. Is that so? Xianhao pointed his finger and sword qi exploded in the air. Boom. The sword qi was directly blocked by the light barrier outside the pavilion on the barren mountain. Everyone, let's attack together. Pan Shuelyan screamed. Hearing this, everyone attacked in unison, bombarding the protective light screen. Rumble. After Ying Ning fell into a deep slumber, the light barrier could only hold on for a short while. Hundreds of people launched their attacks at the same time. Hundreds and thousands of real qi rays bombarded the light curtain like a torrent. The light curtain became increasingly illusory and started to tremble. It seemed as if it would collapse at any moment. What should I do? Mu Xingzu took out the Aurora sword. However, even if she had reached the 4th transformation of the divine soul realm, possessed the soul sword intent and the immortal soul pearl, she was facing hundreds of elite disciples, including Xianhao. This was a death trap that she could not escape from. Senior brother Yi, please don't come. Mu Xingzu bit her lips so hard that they almost bled. She would rather fight alone than let Yi Guchen appear here. Hee hee, Do you still hope that Yi Guqin will come and save you? Let's not talk about whether he has the guts to come. Even if he comes, what can he change? He will only be sending himself to his death. Pan Shuelian chuckled when she saw Mu Xingzhu's determined face. She laughed very happily. She did not want others to get what she could not get. Therefore, Pan Shuelian wanted to see Mu Xingzhu die in the hands of others with her own eyes. This made her happy. The light barrier is about to break. Little Flame Emperor Jian's eyes lit up. Boom, boom, boom. Everyone attacked crazily as if they did not care about their lives. The fortune of a primordial soul realm expert was too tempting. As for Ji Ling and the others, although they wanted to stop them, it was futile in front of the situation. Boom. There was another explosion. The entire barren mountain, stone bridge, and pavilion shook violently. Then bang. The protective light barrier was finally unable to bear the pressure and shattered into light spots. Mu Xingzhu was completely exposed in front of everyone. Go, the fortune of a primordial soul realm expert is right in front of you. Kill her and you can obtain the fortune of a primordial soul realm expert. Get out of the way, this fortune is mine. The moment the light barrier shattered, everyone seemed to have gone crazy. Their eyes were red and they were about to attack. However, at this moment, whoosh! A figure tore through the sky from afar and broke through the air. Accompanied by a cold roar that seemed to shake the gods, it resounded in everyone's ears. Whoever attacks will die under my sword. Chapter 322. Whoever dares to attack will die under my sword. As soon as he said that, the heavens and earth trembled and reverberated in all directions. Everyone who was about to make a move subconsciously stopped in their tracks. The reason for that was because they heard the bone-piercing killing intent contained in those words. That murderous intent sent chills down their spines, as if they had fallen into an ice cave. Swoosh! In the instant that the crowd stopped, that figure fell from the sky like a meteor. With a loud bang, he landed in front of Mu Xingzhu. At that moment, the heavens and earth were dead silent. The hundreds of elite disciples from the 7 major forces were all silent. Their eyes were filled with shock as they looked at the figure in the smoke. Who was it? Who dared to use those words to threaten the hundreds of elites present? Who dared to say that whoever dares to attack will die under my sword? Are you really that stupid? Xianhao's eyes were deep as he looked at the smoke. As the smoke dissipated, a figure in a black robe appeared in front of everyone. His long black hair covered his eyes, but everyone seemed to be able to feel his gaze. It was like an Azura from hell. Yi Guqin. It's Yi Guqin from the Sword Sect. At that moment, everyone's faces were filled with shock. They were not shocked by Yi Guqin's appearance, but by Yi Guqin's courage to appear here. Yi Guqin, you really? Sigh. Ji Ling, Chu Qingqi, and the others' faces froze when they saw that, but they immediately let out a deep sigh. Yi Guqin, you're really here to die. Pan Shuelian's face was filled with joy when she saw that, but it was also filled with coldness. Seeing that it was Yi Guqin who had arrived, the shock on the faces of the disciples from the various major forces gradually turned into greed. It was as if they had seen a new prey. Yi Guqin also had many opportunities. If it was Yi Guqin in his peak condition, they might be a little afraid. However, Yi Guqin's genuine qi was completely crippled. Even though he was tested to have a shocking talent in the pill hall, it only represented his talent and not his actual strength. It was also because of this that Yi Guqin's arrival did not shock the crowd. Instead, it aroused the greed in their hearts to seize the opportunity. Senior brother Yi. Looking at the slightly thin figure standing in front of her, Mu Xingzhu's vision suddenly blurred. Her sparkling eyes were filled with tears. When she was besieged by everyone and everyone wanted to kill her to seize her good fortune. Only Yi Guqin rushed over at the critical moment and stood in front of her, to shelter her from all the wind and rain. At this moment, the image of Yi Guqin's back was deeply engraved in Mu Xingzhu's heart. It was unforgettable. In this life, there was only one man in Mu Xingzhu's heart, the Sword Sect, Yi Guqin. Senior brother Yi. Mu Xingzhu choked. She did not know what to say. Xingzhu, retreat behind me. Yiguchen did not turn his head. His tone was still as calm as usual. It was as if the crisis in front of Yiguchen was like floating clouds. It was nothing. Senior brother Yi, with you here, Xingzhu is not afraid. If you live, I live. If you die, I die. Mu Xingzhu walked forward with firm steps. At this moment, she did not stand behind Yiguchen. Instead, she stood side by side with Yiguchen. In the past, Mu Xingzhu felt inferior. She had always looked at Yiguchen's back with a respectful attitude. However, now that her strength had increased, Mu Xingzhu did not want to hide behind Yiguchen anymore. She wanted to stand side by side with Yiguchen and withstand all the storms. Yiguchen was slightly taken aback. A faint smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. You're still in the mood to flirt when you're about to die. Do you want me to prepare a good coffin for the two of you? Pan Shuelyan sneered when she saw this. Yiguchen's gaze was like a sword as he turned to Pan Shuelyan. Today, you must die. Yiguchen did not say much. He sentenced Pan Shuelyan to death with 5 simple words. This was because he knew that Pan Shuelyan was narrow-minded and vicious. The current situation was most likely caused by Pan Shuelyan. Do you still think you're the sword sect? How dare a useless person like you threaten me? Pan Shuelyan was so angry that she laughed. She was so angry that her face turned pale. Yiguchen, your courage is admirable. However, your stupidity is also laughable. Prince Yuani shook his head slightly. Yiguchen, today, whether it's you or Mu Xingzhu, both of you must die, Ji Yan said coldly. The hundreds of prodigies and elites present all stared at Yiguchen. Each of them had their own plans. The 9 profound sects Qin Yi and the others, as well as the Consonance Palace's Zither Fairy, were all on Yiguchen's side. There were also Ji Ling and the other inner court disciples. However, Yiguchen had even more enemies. The atmosphere at the scene seemed to have frozen over. Only a trace of unbearable hot breathing could be heard. Finally, Xian Hao slowly took a step forward. His gaze swept across the inner court's Ji Ling and the others, as well as the 9 profound sects Qin Yi and the Consonance Palace's Zither Fairy. Ji Ling and the others, as well as Qin Yi and the Zither Fairy, I know that all of you are related to Yiguchen. However, Xian Hao, hereby declare that if any of you dare to help Yiguchen and Mu Xingzhu escape, I, Xian Hao, will not chase after them. However, I will kill all of you. As soon as Xian Hao finished speaking, his aura was unparalleled and domineering. Ji Ling, Qin Yi, the Zither Fairy, and the others' expressions changed. Xian Hao was indeed qualified to say such words. The Zither Fairy gritted her teeth. Just as she was about to refute, Yiguchen suddenly smiled. He said, Ji Ling, Brother Chu, Brother Qin Yi, Bai Yanji, Zither Fairy, all of you, retreat to the side. Yiguchen, Ji Ling, the Zither Fairy, and the others wanted to say something but hesitated. This matter has nothing to do with you, Yiguchen said indifferently. Ji Ling and the others clenched their fists tightly and retreated to the side in the end. The Zither Fairy and the others also retreated to the side helplessly. However, they still kept a close eye on the situation. What exactly is Yiguchen planning? Yiguchen's actions puzzled Prince Yuani and the others. They didn't understand why Yiguchen still had the courage to say such words under such circumstances. This way, it's much simpler. Yiguchen, will you choose to surrender or struggle in vain? Xian Hao's tone was confident that victory was within his grasp. Yiguchen didn't answer. He swept his gaze over the crowd and said, if those who are still here choose to leave, Yiguchen will not pursue the matter. If you don't leave, I'll say the same thing. If anyone dares to attack, they will die under my sword. Yiguchen's tone was calm and his gaze was indifferent. What is he saying? Has water entered his brain, or has he already given up? Everyone was puzzled and found it funny at the same time. Not to mention that Yiguchen's true qi was crippled. Even if he wasn't, he still didn't have the right to say such words under such circumstances. It seems that you've already gone mad. Xian Hao sighed and shook his head. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths, no one left the place. Yiguchen shook his head slightly and turned to Mu Xingzhu. Xingzhu, I'll take you out of here. Mu Xingzu nodded in response. Xian Hao's eyes turned completely cold when he heard that. Yi Guchen, you can't even protect yourself. What right do you have to say such words? Yi Guchen didn't respond. He raised one hand and the bronze cauldron fell into his palm. When the bronze cauldron appeared, everyone's eyes were filled with extreme heat as they stared at Yi Guchen's palm. Yi Guchen, you're still afraid of death. You want to give up the cauldron to save your life, but it's too late. Pan Shuoyan sneered when she saw that. Yi Guchen chuckled. A blood-red pill shot out of the bronze cauldron. Yi Guchen put away the cauldron and held the blood pill. This pill exuded the powerful fluctuations of a sage-to-be pill. That pill is... The eyes of Xian Hao and the others suddenly focused, and their eyes shook. Didn't you guys always say that my true qi is crippled? Then I, Yi Guchen, will kindly show you what I look like when I have my true qi. Yi Guchen swallowed the blood pill as soon as he finished speaking. At that moment, the atmosphere froze. In the next moment, a terrifying blood-red true qi erupted from Yi Guchen's body. He was like an Asura that had awakened and returned from hell. He swore to kill all demons with one sword. Chapter 323. Boom. The terrifying blood-red true energy burst out from Yi Guchen's body. It looked like a blood-red dragon that soared into the sky. Even the dark and gloomy sky was tainted by the true energy, turning into a blood-red color. How is this possible? It's true energy. But didn't they say that Yi Guchen's true energy is gone? How is it possible that he still has true energy? At that moment, everyone who surrounded the area was incomparably shocked. It was as if they had seen a ghost. Yi Guchen's true energy was gone. This was something that almost everyone in the Saint Origin dynasty knew. It was also because of this that the people present dared to force Yi Guchen and Mu Xingzu to do so. After all, Yi Guchen, who had no true energy, was not a threat to them. But now, as they felt the incomparably ferocious blood-colored true qi, even these elite disciples' faces turned deathly pale. This surge of true energy caused them to feel a trace of shock. This true energy fluctuation is comparable to a genius with a divine soul seventh transformation. After feeling the pressure of Yi Guchen's true energy, even Fong Chen, Ji Yan, and the others were shocked. Their eyes were filled with horror and their faces froze. Yi Guchen, are you trying to kill yourself? How dare you take the mad demon blood blaze pill with your true energy gone? Xian Hao said in a cold voice. What? Mad demon blood blaze pill? No wonder he took the mad demon blood blaze pill. Everyone was shocked by Xian Hao's words. Yi Guchen's eyes were deep. What he took was indeed the mad demon blood blaze pill. As a quasi-sage pill, the mad demon blood blaze pill only had one effect. It was to ignite one's own blood and qi to release powerful true energy. Yi Guchen's true energy did not come from his qi. It came from the burning of his blood and qi. It was precisely because he had burned his qi and blood that his true qi was blood-red. Yi Guchen, you really have nothing left to lose. The mad demon blood blaze pellet is a sage-to-be pellet. Its efficacy is terrifying. Even the hidden latch of life and death and the spiritual bridge of heaven and earth would not dare to take it casually. You, a mere qi-refining realm cultivator, actually dared to take it. The corners of Xian Hao's mouth curled into a sneer. What, senior brother Yi? Mu Xingzu's face turned as white as a sheet. It's fine. I've already said that I'll take you and kill our way out. Yi Guchen's expression did not change in the slightest. In fact, Yi Guchen wouldn't have used this pill if he hadn't been forced into such a situation. But right now, Yi Guchen only had one solution. Therefore, he needed to take a gamble. True qi comparable to the seventh divine soul transformation gushed out of Yi Guchen's body. And perhaps because he had burned his qi and blood, this blood-red true qi was also extremely violent and domineering. Yi Guchen's origin ring flashed and the meteorite's soft sword appeared in his hand. He looked around with disdain and his voice was as cold as ice. I'll turn into an Asura and kill all demons with one sword. Yi Guchen, one man and one sword, his qi and blood filled the sky as he blocked hundreds of elites. Everyone, let's attack together. Even if Yi Guqin has temporarily recovered his true qi, he won't be able to hold on for long. Pan Shuelian once again stirred up everyone's emotions and screamed. Pan Shuelian, I've said that you'll die today. Yi Guqin's eyes were as sharp as swords as they pierced towards Pan Shuelian. He used wave-like subtle steps and his figure almost instantly swept over to Lingxi Palace's side. All of you go. Pan Shuelian's face changed drastically. Yi Guqin's true qi cultivation had reached the 7th transformation of Divine Soul. Just that aura alone made Pan Shuelian's heart skip a beat. Pan Shuelian was surrounded by more than 10 female disciples of Lingxi Palace, all of whom were beautiful and charming. When they heard this, they gritted their teeth and attacked Yi Guqin with all their might. Facing this group of beautiful women, Yi Guqin's eyes did not waver at all. He was like the Grim Reaper. Anyone who blocks me will die. Yi Guqin drew his sword and a violent blood-red true qi wrapped around the meteorite's soft sword. A blood-red sword light swept across the sky. God-slaying sword technique, blood slaughter. As soon as the sword struck out, the figures of those female disciples instantly stopped in their tracks. Then, with a plop, more than 10 beautiful heads flew out and blood sprayed in all directions. Some of the blood even splashed on Pan Shuelian's face and body as she retreated rapidly, causing her face to turn pale. Ah! Pan Shuelian screamed. She was on the verge of a mental breakdown. Yi Guqin's eyes were cold as he quickly rushed forward. Hurry up and attack! Pan Shuelian screamed. She was so scared that her heart was about to break. Only then did the surrounding people react. However, when they saw the string of corpses on the ground, they felt a chill run down their spines. Everyone, attack together! Xian Hao shouted coldly. Despite his words, he did not make a move. That was because he could sense that Yi Guqin was extremely dangerous. Xian Hao's words still carried weight. Some of the surrounding disciples could not suppress the greed in their hearts and directly attacked Yi Guqin and Mu Xingzu. Mu Xingzu had been following Yi Guqin closely. Yi Guqin's eyes flashed. He drew his sword and attacked Pan Shuelian. Pan Shuelian screamed again and summoned a lotus. As her true qi surged, the lotus formed a barrier that enveloped her body as if it was a form of protection. Yi Guqin, as long as I can survive this time, I will do everything I can to kill you in the future. After summoning the lotus to protect herself, Pan Shuelian's heart seemed to have calmed down slightly. Her face was full of resentment. However, Yi Guqin's expression did not change at all. He drew his sword again and added the power of the Shura sword will. God-slaying sword technique, yellow spring. With a boom, blood-colored true qi rushed out like the yellow spring and drowned the lotus and Pan Shuelian's bodies. Accompanied by a cracking sound, the lotus protection shattered into specks of light under the ferocious sword strike. Pan Shuelian's face was as pale as paper. She quickly retreated. Yi Guqin was like the god of death. The blood-colored sword light flashed. Pan Shuelian's left arm was broken and blood spurted out. Pan Shuelian's heart was broken and her face was twisted. Yi Guqin's lips curled into a cold smile. He drew his sword again. Puchi! Pan Shuelian's right arm was cut off. Another sword. Pan Shuelian fell to the ground. Her slender left leg was sent flying. Another sword. Her smooth right leg was swung to the side. At this moment, Pan Shuelian's forelimbs were all cut off. Her body was paralyzed on the ground. Only her torso and head were left. Her beautiful face was frozen in horror. Of course, there was also a trace of deep regret in her eyes. If possible, Pan Shuelian would not have provoked Yi Guqin. Let me go. Yi Guqin, I beg you. Pan Shuelian's mouth was filled with blood as she stammered. Hell is a good place for people like you. Yi Guqin drew his sword again. Puchi! Blood spurted out. Pan Shuelian's beautiful head was separated from her delicate body. The expression of the beautiful head that was sent flying was fixed on fear and regret. She did not expect that she would die in the hands of the person she called trash. However, it was too late for regret. The pride of the Consonance Palace, Pan Shuelian of the 5 transformations Divine Soul, was dead. At this moment, everyone's face was filled with horror. They all sucked in a breath of cold air. In their eyes, Yiguchen, who had true chi, was like an Asura from hell who reaped the lives of people. No one could stop him. Chapter 324. Pan Shuelian had died a horrible death. Her limbs weren't intact, and blood flowed everywhere. Everyone present felt a chill in their hearts when they saw the hellish scene before them, causing the hairs on their bodies to stand on end. Zither Fairy and the other female disciples of the Consonance Palace turned pale. Especially Zither Fairy, who had fought with Pan Shuelian for such a long time. But now, Pan Shuelian had died a horrible death in front of her. At this moment, Zither Fairy seemed to have seen Yiguchen for the first time. She couldn't imagine that Yiguchen, who was usually calm and indifferent, would be so powerful and terrifying when he wanted to kill. Killing a 5-transformation divine spirit was as easy as chopping vegetables. Who wouldn't be afraid? The hundreds of disciples from the various factions who were about to attack all stopped in their tracks. Their eyes were filled with fear. None of them had expected Yiguchen, who possessed true energy, to be so terrifying. Xianhao's eyes turned serious for the first time. At this moment, Yiguchen gave him a sense of extreme danger. Disciples of the Consonance Blade Monarch Palace, attack! Although Yiguchen's strength was terrifying, it wasn't enough to intimidate everyone. Emojuechen from the Consonance Blade Monarch Palace ordered. He had a grudge with Yiguchen for a long time. Blood Blade Emojuechen has attacked. He's much stronger than Pan Shuelian. Many spiritual sword arts, king sword arts, bronze pill cauldron, and primordial spirit realm experts can be obtained as long as we kill Yiguchen and Mu Xingzu. Yeah, there are so many of us. Why should we be afraid of the two of them? Although Yiguchen's ruthless methods could intimidate some people, the greed in their hearts once again overcame their rationality. With an expert like Emojuechen taking the lead, the flames of war naturally rose again. Kill Yiguchen and we can obtain all the opportunities. A person shouted. Then, the whole situation was affected. In the blink of an eye, more than 100 elite disciples attacked Yiguchen. They could not hold back and attacked him. Rumble. Perhaps the majority of these 100+ disciples were ordinary divine soul realm martial artists. However, at this moment, when they joined forces and unleashed their techniques at the same time, their might was enough to shake the heavens and earth. Yiguchen, Ji Ling and the others felt their hearts tighten. But with Xianhao's threat in front, they did not dare to act rashly. Yiguchen's origin ring flashed as he summoned the blood cloud centipede. Then Yiguchen ordered it to protect Mu Xingzu. Although Mu Xingzu's strength had skyrocketed, under such a siege, it was obvious that she was struggling. Protect yourself, Yiguchen said calmly as he charged forward with his sword in hand. Yes. Mu Xingzu's beautiful eyes also revealed a resolute look. She held the Aurora sword, and the immortal soul pearl in her sea of consciousness vibrated. An invisible and sharp soul sword intent surged in all directions. At this moment, the siege had officially begun. Facing the joint attack of more than 100 elites, Yiguchen's blood-red genuine chi was like a dragon, and his sword chi filled the sky. He struck out with his sword, and the sword light overlapped with each other as if forming a huge net of sword light. The ultimate move of the boundless heaven sword art, inescapable net. The dense blood-red sword light intertwined into a net and collided with the powerful torrent of moves. With a loud explosion, the surrounding ground shook and countless cracks spread out. Even the dark blue stone bridge collapsed with a bang amidst this huge tremor. The heavens and the earth shook, and the surrounding forest was destroyed. After the loud bang, the heavens and the earth fell into a moment of dead silence. Yiguchen, is he dead? A disciple of the Limitless Sword sect said in a surprised tone. However, at this moment, a blood-red sword light shot out from the dust cloud with a swoosh. The blood-red sword light directly pierced through the heart of the disciple of the Limitless Sword sect. They are not dead yet. Kill! Yiguchen shouted. In the smoke and dust, he used the shadow step and his body pulled out a series of afterimages. Shadow kill sword art, vanishing shadow. Yiguchen swept his sword, and a series of heads rolled down. Blood splattered all over the sky. Yiguchen, don't be so arrogant. Ji Yen of the 3 imperial palaces attacked. He took out the mysterious fire treasure fan, and the flame roared as it attacked Yiguchen. Get lost. Yiguchen's sword power changed again. The sword edge vibrated as though it was resonating with the void. Waves of powerful sword waves surged in all directions and turned the heavens and the earth upside down. The ultimate move of the void sword technique, 1,000 waves. In addition, Yiguchen had already cultivated the sword technique to perfection, so the power of the 1,000 waves was multiplied. The void sword technique of the perfection realm. Xianhao was surprised. Waves of shock waves swept in all directions like raging waves, and the flames that filled the sky were directly scattered. Ji Yan's face was filled with shock. His figure retreated, but he was still hit. A series of cracking sounds rang out, and he spat out blood. When Yiguchen did not have true energy, he could still barely contend with Ji Yan. Now that he had true energy, Ji Yan was nothing in his eyes. Not only that, some of the disciples who were slightly closer to Yiguchen were bleeding from their 7 orifices. Their internal organs were directly shaken into meat paste, and they fell to the ground dead. In just one move, he injured Ji Yan and killed more than 10 elite disciples. At this moment, the world trembled. This is Yiguchen's true strength after possessing true energy? In the distance, Ji Ling covered her red lips with both hands, and her face was filled with disbelief. She found it hard to imagine that Yiguchen, who had always been calm and indifferent in the inner yard, would actually be so powerful after possessing true energy. Even Bai Zichen, Wang Xiaodian, and the others' expressions changed abruptly, and they were shocked. Yiguchen Dai. Blood Saber Mo Juechen charged over with the sword burial saber in one hand. He consecutively slashed out 2 blood-colored saber lights, one horizontal and one vertical. They overlapped and formed a cross that attacked Yiguchen. Blood Fiend Cross Slash. On the other side, Murong Ditian also attacked. His eyes were bloodshot as he directly took out the Mara sword and slashed it at Yiguchen. Fang Chen and Prince Yuani also attacked together. This was a silent, tacit understanding. They attacked together, wanting to completely remove the thorn in their hearts that was Yiguchen. All of you, come at me together. Yiguchen said loudly. The blood and qi in his body burned crazily, and he did not care whether it would dry up or not. At this moment, he only wanted to use the sword in his hand to vent the anger in his heart. My sword sex Yiguchen uses this sword to seek revenge. No, blood is seen. Sword does not retract. Along with Yiguchen's cold shout, the true energy in his body exploded violently, and he attacked again. God-slaying sword technique, 3 paths. 3 violent rivers of blood fiend sword chi suddenly blasted out and attacked the sky prides. Boom, boom, boom. Unparalleled waves of sword chi rampaged wildly, overturning the earth and causing mud to fly everywhere. Yiguchen's body was hit, and he suddenly retreated, a trace of blood flowing out from the corner of his mouth. At the same time, Mo Juechen, Murong Ditian, Fang Chen, Prince Yuani, and the others were also pushed back, and they were all heavily injured. Many disciples from the surrounding factions let out miserable cries as their bodies were directly torn apart by the 3 terrifying rivers of sword chi. The sky was dyed red, and a rain of blood fell. Yiguchen, with one sword, killed until the heavens and earth went silent. Chapter 325. At this moment, the expressions on the faces of the elite disciples, including Ji Ling, Zither Fairy, and the others who were watching the battle from afar, froze in shock. They might have thought that Yiguchen would be very strong after he recovered his true energy. However, they never thought that Yiguchen would be able to defeat all the elites and sky prides with his strength alone. If this scene were to spread, it would definitely shock the entire Saint Origin dynasty. In the center of the battlefield, the ground was in a mess. The corpses of the disciples from various forces were strewn all over the ground, and their blood dyed the ground red. Yiguchen's eyes were scarlet red, and his black robe was stained with blood. He held the meteor-soft sword in his hand and pointed it at the ground. Drops of blood dripped down from the tip of the sword. Kill! Yiguchen didn't waste any time because the insane demon blood ignition pill had caused great damage to his body. Even with Yiguchen's perfect body and vigorous blood essence, he wouldn't be able to hold on for long. Therefore, Yiguchen had to end the battle as soon as possible. He wanted to use thunderous means to kill until everyone trembled in fear. Swoosh! Yiguchen's meteor-soft sword slashed out and slit the throat of another limitless sword sect's disciple. Then he changed the direction of his sword and stabbed the chest of another saber-sealing King Palace's disciple. Kill. Attack together. Murong Ditian, Shinta Miao, Prince Yuani, Fong Qin, Ji Yan, and the others attacked again. Yiguchen circulated the blood essence in his body and burned it to the extreme. Even when facing a group of sky prides, Yiguchen didn't have a trace of fear. In his body, the green heaven-splitting sword's soul burst out. With Yiguchen's current amount of true energy, he directly summoned all 10,000 heaven-splitting sword souls. 10,000 heaven-splitting sword souls burst out from Yiguchen's body like a green sword river, splitting the heavens and splitting the earth. Boom, boom, boom. 10,000 heaven-splitting sword souls swept out like a green dragon sword. What kind of technique is this? Not everyone had seen Yiguchen's methods in the endless plains. Hence, when the heaven-splitting sword soul was summoned, endless screams could be heard from the surroundings. A green sword soul pierced into the body of a disciple from the 3 imperial palaces. Within a few breaths, his internal organs, tendons, and bones had all been cut into pieces. Not only these elite disciples, even Murong Ditian, Shinta Miao, and the others were unable to take care of themselves. The heaven-splitting sword soul was not only powerful, but it was also an AoE skill. It was most suitable for a situation like this. At every moment, there were elite disciples dying under the heaven-splitting sword soul. On the other hand, Yiguchen was like an Azura that had unleashed death. His eyes were incomparably cold. He didn't stay idle either. With every step he took, he would kill a person. Yiguchen turned a blind eye to the sorrowful cries in his ears. Because he had already said that if he retreated, he would be safe and sound, but if he attacked, he would be killed by his sword. Within a short span of a dozen breaths, Yiguchen had taken 30 steps. With every step he took, Yiguchen would swing his sword. With every swing of the sword, an elite disciple would die with a miserable cry. 30 blood steps. With every step, a person would die. No one could stop Yiguchen. Yiguchen is actually so powerful. At this moment, even Bai Zichen, Wang Xiaotian, and the others who were watching from afar felt the corners of their eyes twitch. They were terrified. On the battlefield, the massacre was still ongoing. With a swing of the sword, Yiguchen pierced the throat of a Saint Origin Academy disciple. Blood spurted out with a puff. Yiguchen, you're too arrogant. You've killed so many disciples. No one can save you. The young Marquis Fong Qin was clad in black and gold battle armor and held a black and gold spear in his hand. At this moment, there was blood flowing from the corner of his mouth. It was obvious that he had been injured in the previous battle. With Yiguchen's 7th Divine Soul Transformation True Qi, Fong Qin didn't have the slightest advantage. Not to mention the elites, my sword sect will even kill you geniuses without hesitation. Yiguchen's sword vibrated as he directly executed Vanishing Shadow and rushed toward Fong Qin. Arrogant! Fong Qin coldly shouted as his black and gold spear swept out like a wild dragon. Bang! In the battle between the two sides, Yiguchen had the upper hand. Fong Qin felt a terrifying force coming from the spear, shaking his arm to the point that his bones were about to shatter. Yiguchen's physical body is so terrifying. Fong Qin repeatedly retreated as he vomited blood. Yiguchen, you must die today. On the side, Mo Juechen once again charged over with the sword burial saber. Bang! Yiguchen charged forward with his sword, once again bursting with sword chi and saber light. Ripples spread out in all directions. Mysterious heaven sword art, sword shaking the universe. On the other side, Murong Ditian wielded the Mara sword and executed the ultimate move of the mysterious heaven sword art. The sword light illuminated the sky as it chopped down on Yiguchen. Scram! Yiguchen's eyes emitted cold lightning. The current Murong Ditian wasn't a threat to him at all. The meteor-soft sword vibrated and resonated with the void. The void sword art, thousand-layered waves, was executed once again. In an instant, more than 1,000 sword waves swept out in all directions as if it had set off a spatial storm. The surrounding earth cracked and shattered, and the mountain rocks were all shattered into dust. Boom, boom, boom. The sound of vomiting blood could be heard from all directions. Yiguchen's body also trembled as blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. He was overdrawing his body's qi and blood at every moment. Yiguchen, how long can you last? Just at this moment, Xian Hao, who hadn't made a move since the beginning, spoke in a faint tone. As soon as he spoke, Yiguchen's expression didn't change, but his eyes slightly sank. Xian Hao's words caused the hundreds of disciples who hadn't made a move yet to feel the suppressed greed in their hearts. The Mad Demon Blood Ignition pill has a time limit. After this time limit, not only will you instantly lose all your qi and blood, but your qi and blood will also drop to the lowest level. At that time, I won't even need to make a move and you will immediately fall into a state of death. Xian Hao revealed the truth. Yiguchen wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth with one hand. Let's not talk about what will happen next for now. If I make a move now, even you, Xian Hao, won't be able to withstand it. Yiguchen coldly said. As soon as these words came out, the surrounding people were shocked. In the Saint Origin dynasty, there weren't many people who dared to speak to Xian Hao with such an attitude. Yiguchen? Xian Hao's indifferent expression darkened. He was also a prideful person. The reason he hadn't made a move before was because he didn't want Yiguchen, who had consumed the Mad Demon Blood Ignition pill, to fight with him. It wouldn't benefit Xian Hao at all. However, now that the Mad Demon Blood Ignition pill's time limit was running out, Xian Hao naturally didn't have so many scruples. Yiguchen, Xian Hao, will let you know what it means to be a frog at the bottom of a well. Xian Hao's eyes were cold as the profound Yin sword on his back flew into the air and landed in his hand. Xian Hao had finally made a move. Chapter 326. Boom. Vigorous genuine qi of the 9 transformations of the divine soul gushed out of Xian Hao's body like a collapsing dam. This terrifying amount of genuine qi was even stronger than Yiguchen's after consuming the Mad Demon Blood Ignition elixir. Senior brother Xian Hao is finally making a move. With Xian Hao making a move, it's enough to restrain Yiguchen. They won't be able to survive. Seeing that Xian Hao was finally about to make a move, the hearts of the hesitant elite disciples began to move again. Because of the killing that Yiguchen had caused, they were terrified and did not dare to make a move. However, it was different now. With the great Xian Hao blocking the fiend Yiguchen, these people naturally dared to make a move. Swoosh! Xian Hao drew out the dark Yin sword and charged towards Yiguchen. A vast, soft, and icy sword essence was emitted from it. Is it that vague sword essence again? Yiguchen's scarlet eyes flashed with a sharp light. After Xian Hao had emitted that blurry sword essence several times, Yiguchen had a vague idea of what was going on. But this made Yiguchen even more serious about Xian Hao. He was a strong opponent. Yiguchen's fallen star soft sword soared across the sky, also exuding a mysterious sword intent. Hard and soft sword essence? Xian Hao's eyes dimmed. He knew that Yiguchen possessed a hard and soft sword essence. Clang! An incomparably ear-piercing sound of metal clashing burst forth. Xian Hao and Yiguchen were engaged in a bloody battle. Clang! 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 Xian Hao's expression was calm. The dark Yin sword in his hands swept across the sky, causing the surroundings to become bone-chillingly cold. Drops of rain appeared from the void. Each drop of rain contained sword essence and swept towards Yiguchen. Rain God Sword Technique, Sorrowful Rain. If Yiguchen did not have genuine qi in the past, he would have needed the blood cloud puppet to contend with him. But now, Yiguchen had the strength to contend with Xian Hao with the sword in his hand. Swoosh! God Slaying Sword Technique, Soul Demon. A scarlet, blood-red light spread along the blade of the sword. It tore through the rain of swords with a demonic, terrifying presence as it shot towards Xian Hao. A trace of surprise appeared in Xian Hao's eyes. Even Xian Hao could not help but take Yi Guqin seriously in his current state. His sword art changed again, and actually caused a slight change in the surrounding heaven and earth. A mass of dark clouds accumulated above Xian Hao. Following Xian Hao's attack, a violent rainstorm fell from the dark clouds. It was extremely dense. Every drop of rain was sword chi and contained sword will. A single drop of rain could instantly kill a third transformation divine soul martial artist. Not to mention, the sword chi that filled the sky was like a torrential downpour. Its momentum was astonishing. It's actually the ultimate move of the divine rain sword technique, the rainstorm sword of extinction. Senior brother Xian Hao has actually cultivated a spiritual level sword technique to the transformation level. Xian Mo, Xian Ying, and the other disciples of the Limitless Sword Sect's Sun Moon Hall were all shocked. It was extremely difficult to cultivate a spiritual level sword art to the transformative level. Even the sky prides of the Sun Moon Hall would find it difficult to do so. However, Xian Hao, who was gifted by the heavens, had such an ability. Seeing this, Yi Guqin's eyes flashed and he attacked again. His figure drew out an afterimage. Ignoring the sword rain, he attacked Xian Hao with his sword as if he wanted to perish together with him. Seeing Yi Guqin's desperate move, Xian Hao frowned slightly. However, in the next moment, Xian Hao seemed to have sensed something. His calm expression suddenly changed. His figure blurred almost instantly. He used the exceptional Void Sword Essence ability, and as if he was shuttling through the void, he flashed and appeared 3 feet away. Almost at the same time, the meteorite soft sword's edge cut through the afterimage left by Xian Hao. Yi Guqin's figure actually appeared behind Xian Hao's previous position. Yi Guqin's figure in front of him was directly pierced by the sword rain. There was not a single drop of blood as he dissipated directly. Blood Listening Tower's assassin sword technique? Xian Hao's expression was slightly serious. If not for Xian Hao's sharp senses and rich battle experience, coupled with the Void Sword Essence's ghostly speed, he might have really been killed. Yi Guqin sighed in his heart. Xian Hao was indeed incomparable to ordinary sky prides. His previous move was naturally the ultimate move of the Shadow Assassination Sword technique, instant kill. This move was an assassination move. If it was an ordinary sky pride, they would definitely not be able to dodge this move if they were not prepared. However, Xian Hao managed to dodge it. Xian Hao's eyes were filled with coldness as he almost died. The blurry sword intent in his body once again spread out, bringing with it a surge of extreme yin energy. The surrounding cold air condensed. I understand now. Xian Hao, I didn't expect you to have the exceptional yin-yang sword essence. Yi Guqin's gaze suddenly froze as he said coldly, "Oh, you finally figured it out?" Xian Hao did not look surprised at all. His 2 mystical pattern divine weapons, the Dark Yin sword and the Dark Yang sword, were perfect for his exceptional yin-yang sword essence. However, you still haven't truly comprehended the yin-yang sword essence. It's only a vague embryonic form. It's more like someone forced it on you. Yi Guqin hit the nail on the head. Xian Hao's eyes were cold. However, the truth was just as Yi Guqin said. Xian Hao had not truly comprehended the yin-yang sword essence. His yin-yang sword essence was indeed imparted by someone. And the person who imparted it was the sect master of the Limitless Sword Sect, Shen Wuji. However, if Xian Hao could really completely comprehend the yin-yang sword essence, he would have 2 exceptional sword essences in addition to the Void Sword Essence. By then, even Yan Wushuang and the others would not be able to resist. Do you know why you can't completely comprehend the yin-yang sword essence? Yi Guqin asked with a strange gaze. Why? Xian Hao's eyes were cold. Yi Guqin did not say anything else. The meteorite soft sword flew across the sky, the sword edge vibrating and resonating with the void. Void sword technique, 1,000 waves. Xian Hao saw that Yi Guqin seemed to be playing with him, and his face was frozen. As soon as his dark yin sword came out, It resonated with the void and produced a strong vibrating force. Void sword technique, 1,000 waves. What the two used was the same void sword technique, and it was the ultimate killing move, 1,000 waves. Rumble. The transparent void was like a war drum being beaten, and it kept making vibrating sounds. Waves of powerful transparent sword waves spread out in all directions. Not to mention Yi Guqin and Xian Hao in the field, some of the elite disciples around them who were affected directly vomited blood and flew backward. Some people who were slightly closer were directly shocked to death by the two waves of powerful aftershocks. Xian Hao's eyes flickered, and he directly added the power of the void sword essence. Xian Hao's sword wave seemed to have been added, and it exploded again with a bang. Yi Guqin choked on a mouthful of blood, and he was blasted back dozens of steps. On the other hand, Xian Hao was pushed back 5 to 6 steps. It's a success. Senior brother Xian Hao has pushed back Yi Guqin. Seeing that Yi Guqin was pushed back, not only the people of the Limitless Sword sect, but the other elite disciples of the 3 imperial palaces, the sealed Saber King Hall, and the Saint Origin Academy also heaved a sigh of relief. This was because the shock that Yi Guqin had brought to them was too great. Yi Guqin was like a killing immortal. If Xian Hao did not intervene, almost no one could stop him. At this moment, seeing that Yi Guqin was pushed back for the first time, the surrounding elite disciples were relieved. Disciples of the Limitless Sword sect, listen up. Capture Mu Xingzu alive. I want to study the sword essence in her body, Xian Hao said coldly. Yes. Many disciples of the Sun Moon Hall, including Xian Mo and Xian Ying, responded in unison. However, the eyes of the disciples of the other forces also flickered. Xian Hao was currently fighting with Yi Guqin and could not split himself. Mu Xingzu had the opportunity to become a primordial soul realm expert, which was enough to make everyone envious. Ji Yan of the 3 imperial palaces held the mysterious fire fan and charged toward Mu Xingzu. Nie Ling, Shinta Miao, and the others from the sealed Saber King Hall also attacked. Fang Chen and Crown Prince Yuanyi from the Saint Origin Academy also attacked. In addition, the hundreds of elite disciples who had been intimidated by Yi Guqin and did not attack for the time being no longer had any scruples when they saw that Yi Guqin was being suppressed by Xian Hao. They were like hungry tigers pouncing on their prey as they charged toward Mu Xingzu. Although Mu Xingzu had the blood cloud centipede by her side to protect her, how could she withstand the attacks of so many elites? She was instantly in great danger. Xian Hao, you are courting death. Seeing this, Yi Guqin's eyes were as cold as an ancient abyss. A terrifying blood aura seemed to be about to explode from his body. Oh, are you preparing to use the Azura sword essence to fight to the death? After Xian Hao finished speaking, a mysterious and sharp sword essence also surged from his body, causing the surrounding void to vibrate. Today, I am going to take Mu Xingzu away. No one can stop me. You, Xian Hao, are no exception. Yi Guqin completely burned all the blood in his body and exploded with a terrifying amount of vital energy. However, in Xian Hao's eyes, it was like the final radiance of the setting sun. Boom! Xian Hao also activated the sword essence of the void. The surrounding void vibrated, and streaks of sword chi gathered and roared like dragons. Yi Guqin exploded with the Azura sword essence, and the blood-red sword chi soared into the sky. Xian Hao activated the sword essence of the void. The void vibrated, and the ground was overturned. The two of them collided like two shooting stars. In an instant, the sharp sound of swords shook the heavens and earth. Chapter 327. The ferocious sword chi rippled like a tide, spreading in all directions from the point of collision. This was a collision between two peerless sword essences. Yi Guqin's dark pupils were completely swallowed by the color of blood. Eye of Azura, activate. Xian Hao's body was surrounded by transparent space ripples. Streaks of transparent sword chi seemed to be shuttling through the void. Their speed was extremely fast and incomparably ghostly. Clang, clang, clang. In a short span of time, Yi Guqin and Xian Hao had exchanged more than 100 blows. Sparks flew as the swords collided. Yiguchen, do you know that I haven't even used half of my strength? Xianhao spoke as he attacked, as if trying to shake Yiguchen's mind. What? Yiguchen didn't react to Xianhao's words. Instead, Ji Ling and the others were shocked by Xianhao's strength. Then how do you know my true strength? Yiguchen's state of mind wasn't something that could be shaken by a few words. Are you still going to fight to the death? Xianhao attacked again, his body shuttling through the void. The void vibrated, accompanied by the extreme Yin power, and spread out with a loud bang. Yiguchen used the hard and soft sword essence, combined with the Taiji sword principle, and absorbed the terrifying sword qi. Then, with a loud bang, it exploded. The swift and fierce sword qi tore through the void and shot explosively towards Xianhao. The Taiji sword principle was a mysterious defensive sword principle, and Xianhao was surprised. He attacked again, colliding with the rebounding sword qi torrent with a loud bang, and his body retreated continuously. Yiguchen used wave-like subtle steps and fought with Xianhao. On the other side, Mu Xingzhu was in great danger as she was besieged by the crowd. Although the blood cloud puppet was strong, it was only a puppet after all. Although this puppet is strong, as long as someone keeps it occupied, the others can take down Mu Xingzhu in an instant. Prince Yuani said. Even so, it was impossible for the people of the various major powers to work together. It was also because of their scheming against each other that Mu Xingzhu was barely able to survive. Otherwise, Mu Xingzhu wouldn't have been able to hold on for even a moment with these hundreds of elites. Mu Xingzhu's sword intent is what senior brother Xianhao wants. Who dares to stop him? Xian Mo, Xian Ying and the other disciples of the Sun Moon Hall made their moves. Murong Ditian's expression was heavy, but he also chose to make his move. Opportunities belong to those who are fated. If Xianhao really dares to do anything to me, the other two emperors of the 3 imperial palaces will not let him off. Ji Yan did not have any scruples. The 3 royal palaces and the 3 young emperors. Above him, there were 2 other top-notch geniuses. Mo Juechen, Nie Ling, and the others from the Saber-Sealing Monarch Hall wanted to seize the opportunity by themselves. They didn't care about the limitless sword sex group at all. In such a chaotic situation, everyone would occasionally attack Mu Xingzhu and the blood cloud puppet. At other times, they would fight amongst themselves. Even so, Mu Xingzhu's injuries were still worsening. What was even more despicable was that Prince Yuani, Fang Chen, Murong Ditian, Shinta Miao, Ji Yan, and the others were taking turns to attack Mu Xingzhu. At the same time, the others kept the blood cloud puppet busy so that it couldn't protect Mu Xingzhu. Splat. Mu Xingzhu's dress was torn in many places. Fresh blood flowed out from her fair skin. It was a glaring sight. Blood was also flowing from the corner of her mouth. Her injuries were very serious. If it was any other woman in this situation, they would definitely not be able to hold on. However, Mu Xingzhu's eyes were filled with unswerving determination. She looked into the distance. Yiguchen's clothes were stained with blood as he fought with Xianhao. How could she give up now? Mu Xingzhu, will never give up. I will also not be a burden to senior brother Yi. Mu Xingzhu gritted her teeth as she activated the indestructible soul pearl in her mind. In an instant, a terrifying soul energy that was as thick as the ocean swept out with a loud rumble. Moreover, it wasn't just a soul energy attack. It was also a peerless soul sword intent. The soul sword intent was extremely ghostly. It didn't attack the physical body but the divine spirit. What is this? What a terrifying soul energy. Why does it feel like it isn't any weaker than senior brother Xianhao's? No, it's not just soul energy. There's also searchy. By the time some people reacted, it was already too late. Some of the elite disciples from the various factions cried out in pain. The horrifying shockwave that contained the soul sword essence swept out in all directions like a tidal wave, engulfing hundreds of elite sky prides. Among them, at least 1/3 of the weaker elite disciples let out miserable howls. It was as if a sharp sword had pierced the sea of consciousness in their minds and shredded their souls. Continuous sounds of blood being spat out were heard. 1/3 of the disciples had their sea of consciousness shattered by the soul sword intent. Their bodies fell to the ground lifeless. However, there were still 300 to 400 disciples left. Most of them had a splitting headache and their divine senses were not light. Only Ji Yen, Feng Chen, and Yeling, who were around the 7th transformation of the godly soul, could withstand the shockwave. Even so, their minds were shaken, and they had a splitting headache. Mu Xingzu is so powerful. The group of people in the inner yard was shocked by Mu Xingzu's move. After activating the power of the indestructible soul pearl, Mu Xingzu's pretty face was pale. Her aura weakened again, and she fell to the bottom. She couldn't even stand properly. Huh? You're already an arrow at the end of its flight. You won't be able to use that move a second time. Crown Prince Yuanyi charged forward. On the other side, the Limitless Sword Sect and the sealed Saber Royal Hall also charged forward. Mu Xingzu was sent flying again. It was difficult for her to continue. With so many people, it was like a war of attrition. Each person attacked several times, while the rest defended against the Blood Cloud Centipede's attacks. When Jiling saw this, she couldn't help but curse at how shameless they were. She couldn't help but want to attack, but she was stopped by Zichen. What are you doing? As an inner yard disciple, Mu Xingzu is being humiliated. Are you just going to stand by and do nothing? Jiling's eyes were red. She couldn't bear to see Mu Xingzu in such a miserable state. Didn't you hear what Xianhao said? If you attack alone, all the inner yard disciples will be implicated. Bai Zichen said coldly. This is where you're inferior to Yi Guchen. Jiling gritted her teeth. With Bai Zichen stopping her, she couldn't attack. When Bai Zichen heard this, he didn't say anything, but there was a sinister look in his eyes. Mu Xingzu's side was on the verge of death. She kept spitting out blood from her mouth, dyeing her clothes red. However, Mu Xingzu still didn't give up. Boom! After another exchange, Mu Xingzu's body was sent flying. There were countless wounds on her body. Each wound represented a ruthless attack by someone who wanted to snatch away her opportunity. Mu Xingzu, can't give up. As long as I'm still alive. Mu Xingzu was extremely resilient. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to endure for so long under Qin Lin's oppression. But now, Mu Xingzu felt as if her vision had become blurry. This is the moment. Seeing Mu Xingzu's condition, Prince Yuanyi and the others joined forces and attacked the Blood Cloud Centipede, causing it to retreat a few hundred feet. At this moment, other than Xianhao, who was fighting Yi Guchen, and Jiling, who had retreated far away, the other hundreds of elites all rushed towards Mu Xingzu. As long as they got Mu Xingzu, they would be able to obtain the opportunity to become a primordial soul realm elite. Who wouldn't be crazy? Senior Yingning, Senior Brother Yi, Xingzhu, I've disappointed you. Mu Xingzu's vision became more and more blurry. A tear fell from the corner of her eye. She wasn't crying for herself. She was crying for letting Yi Guchen and Yingning down. Xingzhu, I've said that I'll take you out of here. At this moment, Mu Xingzu seemed to hear Yi Guchen's whisper. Mu Xingzu tried to open her eyes. Then she saw it. It was the endless blood sea and the blood-colored 18 levels of hell above the blood sea. The Azura Blood Sea. Chapter 328. The ferocious sword intent turned into a sea of blood. A terrifying aura surged out of Yi Guchen's body like an ancient volcano erupting. Along with the surging sea of blood, an equally illusory 18 levels of blood rose from the sea of blood. This was the Azura Sword Intense domain of Sword, the Azura Blood Sea. The Sword domain was an ability that could only be executed after one's sword intent had transformed into Sword Dao. Therefore, Yi Guchen could only use the illusory domain of Sword with his current ability. But no matter what, the domain of Sword was still a domain of Sword. Even if it was illusory, its power was still terrifying. This was the second time Yi Guchen had used the Azura Blood Sea. The first time was when Su Jianshi had used her life to block the innate sword embryo for Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen seemed to have been possessed by the devil after using the Azura Blood Sea. His eyes were scarlet as he looked at Mu Xingzu, who was being attacked by the crowd and whose clothes were stained with blood. An uncontrollable rage erupted from the bottom of his heart. If he couldn't even protect the people around him, then how could Yiguchen call himself a sword grandmaster? Rumble! Yiguchen pushed his true chi to the limit and attacked with all his might. The 18 levels of the Azura Blood Sea formed by the Azura Sword intent rumbled as it swept out in all directions like waves crashing onto the shore. At this moment, even the elites who wanted to capture and kill Mu Xingzhu felt their hearts tremble in fear. They felt a terrifying murderous intent lock onto them. The terrifying sea of blood made everyone tremble in fear. All of you are infuriating. Yiguchen's voice was low and hoarse. His scarlet azura eyes swept across the several hundred people present. Everyone who met his gaze felt a chill run down their spines, as if they had fallen into an ice cave. A sense of terror that made one's scalp go numb surged up their spines. This! Yiguchen, what a terrifying killing intent. Some of the weaker ones were even trembling all over, their teeth chattering. Yiguchen, you are powerless today. Xianhao shook his head slightly. You're the ones who brought this upon yourselves. Yiguchen raised his meteor soft sword again. In an instant the world fell silent. Boom! An indescribably terrifying aura erupted from Yiguchen's body. The fallen star soft sword seemed to be covered with a layer of blood. A sharp sword aura that caused one's entire body to turn numb shot out, splitting the sky and shaking the ground. God-slaying sword technique? Yama. Boom. Yiguchen's low voice seemed to come from the depths of hell. Boundless and terrifying blood-red sword intent rose from the fallen star soft sword. In the end, it actually condensed into a huge, blurry blood-red figure behind Yiguchen. That huge blood-red figure was like the king of hell, ready to harvest everyone's lives. Swoosh! Yiguchen stood above the 18 layers of blood prison and swung his sword horizontally. As he swung his sword, the huge blood-red figure behind him also swung its sword across the sky at the same time. The fifth move of the god-slaying sword technique, Yama. When the sword was swung, the heavens shook. When the sword was swung, the coldness of hell. When the sword was swung, the blood-red sword light split the sky and shook the earth in all directions. Boom! Even Xianhao's expression changed abruptly before this sword strike. Ultimate sword technique, endless sword. Xianhao hurriedly raised his sword to block. He used his core sword technique and thousands of sword shadows swept across the sky. However, even Xianhao could not block Yiguchen's all-out attack in time. He retreated rapidly and spat out a mouthful of blood. However, that wasn't the end of the attack. It continued to charge towards the hundreds of elite sky prides who were surrounding Mu Xingzhu. No! Not to mention the weaker disciples, even Ji Yen, Fang Qin, Mo Juechen and the others were shocked. They hurriedly retreated as they tried to defend themselves. The elites from the various forces exploded into minced meat in the blood-red sword light. Blood splattered everywhere and dyed the vast earth red. In the end, only half of the densely packed figures were left. More than 100 elite disciples exploded into a puddle of blood under Yiguchen's Shura sword. One sword to kill 100 people. Not only that, even Xianhao and the other elites could only temporarily hide their power. As for Ji Yen, Fang Qin, and the rest, they were also severely injured. They spat out mouthfuls of blood and their combat power decreased by more than half. The 3-foot sword opened a bloody path. One sword was invincible. Yiguchen used the 3-foot-long sword in his hand to open up a bloody path of survival. Xingzhu, let's go! The vermilion bird wings appeared behind Yiguchen's back. He dashed in front of Mu Xingzhu and hugged her delicate body. He kept the blood cloud puppet and dashed out along the bloody path opened by Yama's sword. Puchi! Xianhao spat out a mouthful of blood as he watched Yiguchen's figure disappear into the distance. Even he did not expect Yiguchen's God-Slayer sword skill to be so powerful. Of course, Yiguchen's sword was the 5th form of the God-Slayer sword skill. Its power was comparable to a King sword skill. In addition to the Shura sword intent, the 18 levels of the Shura Blood Sea had an amplifying effect on the God-Slayer sword skill. Yi Guchen's sword was so powerful that it could shock the heavens with all kinds of support. Everyone present, including Ji Ling, Bai Zichen, Zither Fairy, and the others who were far away, were stunned. One sword to kill 100 people. What kind of concept was that? Moreover, the people Yi Guchen killed were not ordinary disciples. They were the elites of various forces. If news of this battle spread, the entire Saint Origin dynasty would be shaken. At this moment, the eyes of Yi Guchen's enemies were filled with fear. Most of them were severely injured and would not be able to chase after Yi Guchen in a short period of time. As for the ordinary elite disciples, they were already scared out of their wits by Yi Guchen's Shura sword. Even if they had the strength to spare, they did not dare to chase after him. It's too terrifying. He's not a sword master. He's a demon. A sword demon. Some disciples sat on the ground, paralyzed, with cold sweat all over their bodies. The ground was scarlet red. Broken bones, severed limbs, and blood flowed everywhere. All of this was caused by Yi Guchen's sword. The Void Sword realm will close in less than 7 days. I will be guarding the teleportation formation in the center. If Yi Guchen wants to leave this place, he must go through the teleportation formation, Xian Hao said coldly as he wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. The remaining people's eyes gradually lit up when they heard this. That's right. Yi Guchen only has such strength because he took the insane demon-burning blood elixir. When the effect of the elixir wears off, not only will his strength drop, but he will also be weaker than before. Even his life will be in danger, Prince Yuani said thoughtfully. Some of the people who were terrified of Yi Guchen also thought about it after hearing this. That's right. Yi Guchen only has such strength because he took the insane demon-burning blood elixir. When the effect of the elixir wears off, he will not be a threat. Yes, we will wait for him at the teleportation formation and wait for him to take the bait. I want to avenge my senior and junior brothers. For a moment, the people who were scared out of their wits by Yi Guchen became active again. They all rushed towards the teleportation formation in the center of the Void Sword realm. As long as the teleportation formation was guarded, unless Yi Guchen wanted to be trapped in the Void Sword realm, he would definitely appear. Seeing everyone's reaction, the people on Ji Ling's side suddenly changed their expressions. They are forcing Yi Guchen and Mu Xingzhu into a dead end. Ji Ling gritted his teeth but felt powerless. However, at this moment, Yi Guchen had already flown 100 miles away with Mu Xingzhu. Chapter 329. In the sky, a figure with a pair of wings on his back flew far away. When Yi Guchen had escaped far enough, he could no longer hold on. His body fell directly to the ground. Boom! Blood flowed out of Yi Guchen's mouth and the thick blood-colored Jinqi on his body dissipated. His aura immediately fell to the bottom. An extremely weak feeling of emptiness spread out from every cell in his body. Senior brother Yi. Mu Xingzhu's condition was only slightly better than Yi Guchen's. She was also extremely weak and her body was covered in wounds and blood. Yi Guchen forced himself to hold on and took out the 2 quasi-sage pills from his bronze furnace. These 2 sage-to-be pills had the effect of recovering qi and blood, as well as healing injuries. Xingzhu, take it. Yi Guchen gave one of the quasi-sage pills to Mu Xingzhu and swallowed one himself. Only after swallowing the quasi-sage pill did Yi Guchen feel a little better. However, that was all. The effect of the Mad Demon Blood Blaze pill was too overbearing. Not to mention with Yi Guchen's current cultivation base. Even life and death chamber experts would have to think twice before taking the Mad Demon Blood Blaze pill. The reason why Yi Guchen was able to withstand such overbearing medicinal power was because of his perfect physical body and strong qi and blood. In addition, he had the golden body liquid, which greatly increased the strength of his body. That was why he dared to take it. However, even so, Yi Guchen's injuries were severe and he was extremely weak. Senior brother Yi, I'm sorry. It's all because of Xingzhu. Mu Xingzhu's eyes turned red as she looked at Yi Guchen, who was extremely weak and pale. It has nothing to do with you. Heal your body first. Yi Guchen's voice was weak. Mu Xingzhu bit her lips and didn't say anything. However, the determination in her watery eyes became even stronger. I'm still too weak. I have to become stronger. Mu Xingzu swore in her heart. She didn't want the people she cared about to get hurt because of her. Just like that, 3 days passed. After consuming the quasi-sage elixir, Yiguchen took out many supreme-grade healing elixirs. However, even with so many pills, Yiguchen and Mu Xingzu's injuries were still very serious. They had only recovered slightly. But at this moment, there were less than 4 days before the Void Sword realm was completely closed. Let's not talk about whether these 4 days are enough for me to break through. Just based on the current situation, my chances of breaking through will be greatly reduced. Yiguchen thought to himself. His face was pale and his qi and blood were low. The effects of the Mad Demon Blood Ignition pill were too overbearing. Even after recuperating for 3 days and consuming the quasi-sage pill, it would be difficult for him to recover in a short period of time. Mu Xingzu, on the other hand, was slightly better off because she was only injured. Unlike Yiguchen, who had to swallow pills to squeeze out the potential of his qi and blood, she recovered quite quickly. Senior brother Yi, in less than 4 days, the Void Sword realm will be closed. At that time, it will be very dangerous, Mu Xingzu said. I know. As for Xian Hao and the others, they will definitely wait outside the formation to leave the Void Sword realm. Although my Azura technique can deter some people, they also know that I have such strength because of the pills. In the future, they won't be too afraid of me. Yiguchen sighed slightly. Then what should we do? We can't be trapped here. Senior brother Yi, you must go out. Mu Xingzu stared at Yiguchen and there seemed to be some kind of determination in her eyes. Xingzhu, I know what you're thinking. Get rid of that thought. I, Yiguchen, will not let the people I care about sacrifice to seek a way out for myself, Yiguchen said calmly. Senior brother Yi, hearing the words, the people I care about, Mu Xingzu's eyes were glittering. Her sense of longing and respect for Yiguchen, which was originally like a master, gradually had a different kind of feeling. But when she thought of the crisis in front of her, Mu Xingzu's eyes dimmed slightly. I will let you leave the Void Sword realm safely. Yiguchen's eyes surged with light, as if he was thinking about something. Senior brother Yi. Mu Xingzu's face changed slightly. Yiguchen's words were to let her leave safely, not leave together. You don't have to worry about me. When the time comes, just listen to my orders. I will ensure your safety. Yiguchen did not say much, but there was a trace of tiredness between his eyebrows. No, Xingzhu said that in life and death, I will be with senior brother Yi. Mu Xingzu said stubbornly. If you don't listen to me, then we will sever all ties and be strangers. Yiguchen closed his eyes and said. Mu Xingzu's delicate body trembled slightly when she heard this, and her face turned pale. If they really severed all ties, it would make Mu Xingzu's heart ache even more. Xingzhu, I understand. Mu Xingzu clenched her fists tightly, and her fingernails pierced her skin slightly, oozing drops of blood. Xian Hao, don't push me too far. Otherwise, even if I die, it will be difficult for you to live. Yiguchen sighed and whispered in his heart, but the determination and coldness in his eyes became more and more intense. As the days passed, the day of the Void Sword realm's closing finally arrived. The only way to leave the Void Sword realm was to enter the transmission formation at the center of the entire Void Sword realm. Moreover, the transmission formation would not last for a long time, only for a short while. Therefore, in the past, the disciples of many forces would arrive at the transmission formation in advance to avoid missing the time. Once they missed the time, they could only stay in the Void Sword realm for a whole year. However, in a completely closed Void Sword realm, the degree of danger was almost 10 times or 100 times higher. Even the hidden latch of life and death and spiritual bridge of heaven and earth experts could not guarantee that they could survive. Therefore, no one was willing to stay in the Void Sword realm for a year. At that moment, outside the core transmission formation in the center, the disciples of the seven forces had already gathered together. However, compared to the past, the number of disciples who survived this time was pitifully small. Among the disciples who died, A small number of them died accidentally in some dangerous places or formations. Most of them were killed by Mu Xingzu and Yi Guqin. This time, in the Void Sword realm, apart from the Sword Sect's inner yard of the Forest of Pagodas, 9 Profound Sect, and Lingxi Palace, the disciples of the other forces suffered heavy casualties. Almost half of them died. This was a shocking number. If the news were to spread, the higher-ups of the various forces would be so angry that they would vomit blood. Yi Guqin, will you walk right into the trap? Xian Hao stood before the transmission formation and looked into the distance. Not only him, but Murong Ditian, Xianimo, Xianing, conferred Saber King Palace, Nialing, Mo Juechen, Shinta Miao, Zhou Yan, Yan Kun. 3 imperial palaces, Ji Yan and the others. Saint Origin Academy's Prince Yuani and Fang Qin. Sword Sect's Forest of Pagodas, Ji Ling, by Zichen and the others. 9 Profound Sects Qin Yi, by Yenji and the others. Lingxi Palace's Zither Fairy and the others. All the disciples of the 7 forces in the Void Sword realm were gathered outside the transmission formation. It could be said that this was Xian Hao's scheme. He would stay here and see if Yi Guqin would walk right into the trap. 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, rumble. As the time approached, the transmission formation also let out a rumbling sound. Rays of light from the transmission formation flickered. The surrounding space seemed to fluctuate. One could faintly see cracks in the space. This meant that the transmission formation was about to be activated. Moreover, it would only be activated for a short period of time. Yi Guqin, as expected, I overestimated you. Xian Hao shook his head slightly. However, at this moment, whoosh, a figure flew over from the sky. It was Yi Guqin. He had brought Mu Xingzhu with him as he soared into the sky and arrived at the scene. Yi Guqin. Xian Hao's eyes were cold. Yi Guqin's expression was calm. His gaze was indifferent as he confronted the disciples of the various forces. In an instant, the atmosphere was frozen and suffocating. Chapter 330. At the core of the Void Sword realm, the teleportation formation gradually glowed. The surrounding void was vibrating, and spatial cracks appeared from time to time, like the giant mouth of a ferocious beast. It was frightening. Obviously, the Void Sword realm was about to close, and the teleportation formation would soon be activated, and it would only be activated for a short period of time. However, Xian Hao and the others stood outside the teleportation formation, looking coldly at Yi Guqin and Mu Xingzu. Yi Guqin's gaze swept across the people of the 7 major forces. Apart from Ji Ling, Zither Fairy and his companions, the other elites of the various forces had a faint fear in their eyes. There were also some geniuses who had a grudge against Yi Guqin. While they looked fearful, there was also hatred in their eyes. All of this was because Yi Guqin's previous performance was too shocking, and it made them tremble in fear. If they didn't know that Yi Guqin had such strength because he had consumed the mad demon-burning blood elixir, none of them would have dared to step forward to stop him. Yi Guqin, I am indeed surprised that you are still alive after consuming the mad demon-burning blood elixir. However, you should be unable to use your true qi now. Xian Hao's gaze was deep and solemn. At the same time, there was a faint killing intent in his voice. He, Xian Hao, had dominated the Saint Origin dynasty. He had never suffered a great loss even when facing the double crown king of the land of 5 elements barbarian tribe. However, he had been pushed back by Yi Guqin and even coughed up blood. To Xian Hao, this was a stain in his heart that could not be erased. Moreover, many of his opportunities had been taken away by Yi Guqin. All of this made Xian Hao want to kill Yi Guqin. Not only Xian Hao, there were many people who wanted to kill Yi Guqin. Murong Ditian, Jiyan, Mo Juechen, Shinta Miao, Prince Yun. At this moment, their gazes were extremely cold, like sharp swords that pierced towards Yi Guqin. Everyone present could sense that Yi Guqin's entire body no longer had a trace of true energy fluctuation. Not only that, the feeling that Yi Guqin gave them now was even weaker than before he took the mad demon blood ignition pill. Yi Guqin is already an arrow at the end of its flight. It will be difficult for him to continue fighting. That's right. Yi Guchen won't be able to escape today. Just surrender. Those who had been apprehensive and fearful of Yi Guchen immediately relaxed when they saw that Yi Guchen seemed to be unable to fight. They believed that Yi Guchen was already a turtle in a jar. Noisy. Yi Guchen frowned and shouted coldly. Although there was no trace of genuine qi, that terrifying killing intent caused the disciples of the various powers, who had just heaved a sigh of relief, to involuntarily retreat as sweat dripped down their faces. This was the momentum that Yi Guchen had created. Now, in everyone's eyes, he wasn't just the sword master. More like a demon. A sword demon who had killed 100 people with a single sword. Yi Guchen, you are indeed an opponent that I can't help but admire. If possible, I, Xian Hao, would be willing to sit down with you and drink 300 cups of wine and discuss the Tao with the sword. Unfortunately, I'm destined to not have this opportunity. Xian Hao shook his head slightly as his long black and white hair fluttered in the wind. You will have this opportunity, Yi Guchen said with a deep gaze. Oh, could it be that you still have some tricks up your sleeve in this situation? Even if you still have a mad demon blood ignition pill, you will definitely die if you dare to take it. Xian Hao's gaze seemed to be able to see through Yi Guchen. He wasn't afraid of Yi Guchen, but he also didn't want Yi Guchen to risk his life and drag him down with him. I don't have a second mad demon blood ignition pill. Yi Guchen shook his head slightly. As soon as these words were spoken, the surrounding people who were vigilant heaved a sigh of relief. Yi Guchen, this void sword realm will be your burial ground. Mo Juechen's tone was as cold as ice. Murong Ditian and the others also looked at Yi Guchen as though they were looking at a dead man. Under such circumstances, they didn't think that Yi Guchen would be able to turn the tables. Senior brother Yi, Mu Xingzu, who was standing at the side, felt very uncomfortable. Yi Guchen was a true sword grandmaster and had the pride of a sword cultivator. However, he had now been forced into a corner by a group of despicable people. This made Mu Xingzu feel as though her heart was being pierced by a knife. She felt that it was all her fault. Xingzhu, when the teleportation array is activated later, go directly to Ji Ling and the others and let them protect you. Yi Guchen lowered his voice. Then what about you, senior brother Yi? Mu Xingzu's heart clenched. I said before that you don't have to worry about me. Yi Guchen's gaze was cold. A solemn atmosphere pervaded the air. As time passed, the light from the teleportation array became more and more intense. At the same time, the surrounding void vibrated more and more frequently, and pitch-black spatial cracks started to spread out. Rumble. The teleportation array lit up. Yi Guchen, it's over. Xian Hao and the others didn't delay any longer and immediately attacked. Apart from the inner yard, Jiaoxian sect, Zither Fairy and the others, the rest of the people rushed towards Yi Guchen and Mu Xingzu. In an instant, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth churned, and the sound of wind breaking could be heard continuously. Under the encirclement of so many people, Yi Guchen and Mu Xingzu, who had lost their true qi, had no way to retreat. Xingzhu, let's go, Yi Guchen said softly. At the same time, a translucent pearl appeared from between his eyebrows. It was the child pearl that Ying Ning had separated from the indestructible soul pearl. Mu Xingzu's primordial soul transformation is already in my hands. Can you snatch it from me? Yi Guchen shouted coldly. At the same time, the child pearl emitted a ring of vigorous spiritual energy. In an instant, the disciples of the various factions who were rushing over were stunned. Mu Xingzu took advantage of this gap to unleash all her true qi and rush towards Ji Ling and the others. At this moment, the teleportation array was completely activated, and a dazzling light soared and turned into a pillar of light. However, the teleportation array seemed to be a little unstable, and the surrounding void vibrated violently, and spatial cracks spread out. Forget it, let's capture and kill Yi Guchen first. After a moment of hesitation, the crowd continued to rush towards Yi Guchen. In their opinion, Yi Guchen was already unable to escape. Yi Guchen. On the other side, Ji Ling and the others were shocked. They wanted to take action, but Bai Zichen and the others would rather watch coldly from the sidelines than lend a shred of strength. Senior brother Yi. Mu Xingzu's tears flowed. Do you think you have me? Yi Guchen smiled faintly as he looked at the crowd that was rushing towards him. For some reason, Xian Hao stopped immediately when he saw the smile on Yi Guchen's face, and his eyelids twitched violently. No, Yi Guchen is too calm. Xian Hao frowned. At this moment, Yi Guchen's origin ring flashed, and 2 items landed in his hands. It was a fist-sized purple crystal and a silver jade talisman. That's the jade talisman that contains the extreme void dark thunder? Xian Hao's pupils constricted, and he instinctively retreated. Not only Xian Hao, but Prince Yuanyi, Fang Chen, Nieling, Mo Juechen, and the others also sensed that something was wrong. However, most of them still rushed towards Yi Guchen, their eyes burning with desire as they dreamed of seizing the opportunity. I should be the one to say it's over. Yi Guchen smiled coldly and crushed the purple crystal and the silver jade talisman. The purple crystal contained the purple lightning nether thunder. The silver jade talisman contained the extreme void dark thunder. Under the gaze of Xian Hao and the other elites, Yi Guchen held the 2 balls of lightning that were about to burst out. With a cold smile on his face, he put them together with a loud bang. In an instant, the world fell silent. In another instant, there was a loud boom, as if thunder had just broken out. Endless waves of lightning burst forth, drowning the world. Chapter 331. The heavenly variant lightning was a violent energy born from the heavens and earth. The energy contained in every type of heavenly variant lightning was extremely terrifying. It was also because of this that violent things like the heavenly variant lightning were almost impossible to contain. This was also the reason why the former Qin Aoshi did not absorb the purple lightning nether lightning into his body after obtaining it, because he already had the 9 heavens Xian lightning. Unless his cultivation was raised to a terrifying level, he would not be able to contain 2 types of heavenly variant lightning. Moreover, there were not many people who would think of merging the heavenly variant lightning. If such berserk objects were to collide with each other, the power and destructiveness of the collision would be immeasurable. Just like what Yi Guchen was doing now. That violent explosion was like the rumbling of thunder when the heavens and earth were first created. When the disciples of the forces who were charging towards Yi Guchen saw that Yi Guchen had merged the 2 types of heavenly variant lightning together, their faces were immediately filled with horror. Lunatic, this Yi Guchen is a lunatic. Run, damn it. Everyone let out a roar of horror as if they had seen the most terrifying thing in the world. All of you shall be buried together. Yi Guchen closed his eyes. Boom. Indescribably terrifying lightning swept out like a wave of 10,000 miles. That terrifying wave of lightning tore the earth apart, caused the void to tremble, and caused the sky to change color. This was a huge explosion, a huge destruction. Retreat. Even Xian Hao was extremely shocked. In an instant, the Xian Yin and Xian Yang mystical rune divine weapons were placed in front of him to defend against the terrifying wave of lightning. Puchi. Even so, Xian Hao's figure was still fiercely pushed back as he spat out blood. Even his sleeves were instantly turned into ashes, and his arm was charred black. Even Xian Hao, who was in the 9 transformations of the godly soul, was in such a sorry state. Murong Ditian's face was filled with horror as he blocked the Mara sword in front of him. He was also hit by the extremely terrifying wave of lightning and was heavily injured as he spat out mouthfuls of blood. As for Xian Ying, Xian Mo, and the other disciples of the Sun Moon Hall, they all let out miserable cries. Their bodies were directly submerged in the purple and silver lightning. Their bodies were charred black and their lives were taken away in an instant. They did not even have a chance to resist. Not only was the limitless sword sect like this, the disciples of the other powers all let out mournful cries amidst this world-destroying lightning tide. On the side of the 3 imperial palaces, almost all the disciples were instantly drowned by the thunder tide, their bodies torn apart by the lightning. Even Ji Yen, who was known as one of the 3 little emperors, was unable to resist the terrifying impact of the 2 types of strange lightning. His face was distorted as he let out a miserable howl. His body was completely torn apart. Little Flame Emperor, Jiyan, was dead. As for the disciples of the Sealed Blade Royal Hall, they were also swept into it. Nie Ling, Emo Juechen and Shinta Miao rapidly retreated. Each of them was struck by the lightning tide, and they vomited blood as though it was free. They had used all sorts of life-saving methods. As for Zhou Yen, Yen Kuan, and the other disciples of the Heavenly Saber List, as well as the other disciples of the Sealed Blade Royal Hall, they were not so lucky. They could not resist the terrifying impact and were directly torn apart by the violent lightning. Their flesh and blood exploded. The remaining disciples of the Saint Origin Academy were almost completely annihilated. Prince Yuani's body was charred black. He had almost died and fainted. Yi Guqin deserves to die. Young Marquis Fangchen spat out large mouthfuls of blood. His appearance was as miserable as it could be. He grabbed the half-dead Prince Yuani and quickly retreated. In an instant, there were several hundred disciples of the various powers that charged towards Yi Guqin. Most of them were killed in an instant. Only a few supreme geniuses were barely able to return to the teleportation formation. However, they were all severely injured. It was a tragic sight. On the other hand, the Sword Sect Pagoda, the Nine Profound Sect, and the Zither Fairies group were not affected too much because they were within the teleportation formation. However, when they saw the destructive lightning tide, their hearts trembled. Mu Xingzu's tears fell like rain as she looked at Yi Guqin's figure at the center of the lightning tide. Rumble! The teleportation formation was activated and the void shook. At the same time, the terrifying lightning tide burst forth and the surrounding void became unstable. In the core area where Yi Guqin was located, the space was torn apart by the thunder tide, revealing a pitch-black spatial crack. Yi Guqin's figure, which was submerged in the lightning tide, was directly sucked into the pitch-black spatial crack. Senior brother Yi! Mu Xingzu let out a heart-wrenching scream. She could not help but want to rush out of the teleportation formation. Mu Xingzu, don't let him down. Ji Ling held back her tears and hugged Mu Xingzu tightly, not letting her leave. No! Mu Xingzu was heartbroken. If Yi Guqin was only submerged in the lightning tide, Mu Xingzu still had a glimmer of hope. But if she was sucked into the spatial turbulence, there was almost no chance of survival. Not to mention someone with Yi Guqin's cultivation, even a spiritual bridge of heaven and earth expert would not have a chance of survival if they were sucked into the spatial turbulence. Damn it! Xian Hao, who was in the teleportation formation, looked gloomy. Not only did he not get the opportunity, but he was also put in such a difficult situation by Yi Guqin. As for the rest, although they hated Yi Guqin to the core. But when they saw Yi Guqin being sucked into the spatial crack, they finally breathed a sigh of relief. The sword demon, who made them tremble in fear, was finally dead. Boom! The teleportation formation burst out with intense light and sent the group out of the Void Sword realm. And here, as Yi Guqin was sucked into the spatial crack, the two-colored lightning tide with destructive fluctuations also dissipated. Only the cracked and broken earth and hundreds of charred bones were left. These bones were all the elites of the Seven Forces. It could be imagined that what happened in the Void Sword realm would definitely set off a huge storm in the Seven Forces and even the Saint Origin dynasty. Outside the Void Sword realm, Floating Mountain. The Floating Mountain, which had been silent for a month, suddenly erupted with a roar and the surrounding void was like water ripples. At the foot of the Floating Mountain stood more than 10 figures. Among them, there were old men, middle-aged men, and charming women. They were the elders of the Seven Forces. Among these people, the two inner school elders, Qing He and Gu Tua, were among them. Today should be the day when the Void Sword realm closes. I wonder what kind of opportunity Xian Hao will get. Among these people, an old man in a black and white Taoist robe said with a smile. He was an elder of the Limitless Sword Sect's Sun Moon Hall, called Xian Gu. If that girl Yen Wushuang is willing to come, I'm afraid Xian Hao won't get any benefits, Qing He said coldly. The Limitless Sword Sect and the Sword Sect's Tower Forest were like fire and water. I wonder what the disciples of the 3 imperial palaces have gotten? An elder of the 3 imperial palaces chuckled. One of the 3 little princes of the 3 imperial palaces, Ji Yan, is among them. With his strength, he must have gotten a great opportunity. Unfortunately, my consonance palace's heaven's pride, Lu Qinghan, did not come. I'm afraid Pan Shuelian and Zither Fairy won't be able to compete with you. A charming woman chuckled. She was an elder of the Consonance Palace. The kids of my Consonance Blade King Palace aren't bad either, the middle-aged man from the Consonance Blade King Palace said in a low, muffled voice. With the young Marquis Fong Qin here, the Crown Prince and the others should have gotten something as well, a golden-robed elder of the Saint Origin Academy said with a faint smile. Obviously, he was very confident in his sect's heaven's pride. Just as the elders of the 7 major forces were waiting, rays of light surged outside the floating mountain and figures finally came out. The one who rushed out was Xian Hao. Ah, Xian Hao has come out? Xian Gu said with a smile. He was about to go up and ask Xian Hao what he had gotten. However, in the next moment, Xian Gu's smile froze. Not only that, the elders of the other forces also widened their eyes in disbelief as if they had seen a ghost. Their gazes were fixed on Xian Hao, who was in a sorry state. How is this possible? Xian Gu was shocked. Chapter 332. Xian Gu was shocked because he couldn't believe what he was seeing. As the top genius of the Limitless Sword sect's Sun Moon Hall, the famous genius of the Saint Origin dynasty, Xian Hao, was in such a sorry state. His black and white robe was torn in many places. His sleeves were gone and his arms were charred black with blood flowing down. His black and white hair was a little messy. Was this still the Xian Hao who was known as a top-notch genius? Xian Gu couldn't believe it. He rubbed his eyes and looked again, but it was still the same. Xian Hao, what's going on? Xian Gu's face turned pale. In Xian Gu's mind, Yan Wushuang, Gu Zun, the 3 imperial palaces' little war emperors and LV Qinghan of the Consonance Divine Palace didn't come to the Void Sword realm. Logically speaking, Xian Hao should be invincible and there shouldn't be any problem for him. But now, Xian Hao was in such a sorry state. Not only was Xian Gu confused, but the elders of the other forces were also surprised. However, Elder Qing He and Elder Gu Tuo had a gloating smile on their faces. Although they didn't know what made Xian Hao suffer, they were happy to see the disciples of the Limitless Sword sect in such a sorry state. Behind Xian Hao, only Murong Ditian came out. But his condition was even worse than Xian Hao's. What's going on? Where are the other disciples? Xian Gu's heart skipped a beat as he sensed that something was wrong. They're all dead. Xian Hao didn't want to say more as his eyes were gloomy. What? Xian Gu stood on the spot as his brain buzzed as if he was struck by lightning. How is this possible? Who could force the Limitless Sword sect to such a state? Hearing Xian Hao's words, the elders of the other forces were shocked. Could it be that there's someone stronger than Xian Hao in the Void Sword realm? The elders thought inwardly. But after a short while, more figures appeared. Nie Ling, Mo Juechen and Shinta Miao from the Consonance Divine Palace were in a sorry state with blood dripping from their mouths. The moment they came out, they couldn't help but kneel on the ground and vomit blood. The middle-aged man from the Consonance Divine Palace turned pale as he hurriedly stepped forward. What's going on? The middle-aged man asked solemnly. Just now, when he saw the miserable state of the Limitless Sword sect, he was still rejoicing in their misfortune. In the end, when his own disciples came out, they were also incomparably miserable. Compared to the people who went in, only Nie Ling and the other 3 came out. What's going on? Where are Zhou Yan and Yan Kuan? They are both disciples on the Heavenly Saber list. Where are they now? The middle-aged man asked anxiously. They are all dead, Nie Ling said with a pale face. What? After Xian Gu, the middle-aged man was also stunned. He was somewhat unable to accept this news. Then, Fong Chun of the Saint Origin Academy appeared with a wretched look on his face, dragging the half-dead and charred Prince Yuan. Your Highness! The Saint Origin Academy's golden-robed elder also turned pale. He hurriedly stepped forward and fed the Crown Prince a healing elixir. what exactly is going on? The golden-robed elder couldn't help but cry out, clenching his teeth. Apart from Fang Chen and Prince Yuani, no one else from St. Origin Academy came out alive. How could this be? Could it be that some terrifying demonic beast appeared in the Void Sword realm? Or is there a fatal formation mechanism? Seeing that these forces were all incomparably miserable, even Qin He and Gu Tuo began to feel apprehensive. Don't tell me that our inner court disciples also suffered a calamity? Qin He was nervous. At this moment, light flashed, and Ji Ling, Bai Zichen, and the others finally appeared. It's the disciples of the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest. Xian Gu and the other elders of the other forces all looked over. Their disciples had suffered heavy losses, so they naturally thought that the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest was also in the same situation. However, what happened next caused their faces to freeze. The disciples of the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest came out one by one. Compared to when they went in, there were almost no losses. Seeing that most of the inner court disciples were safe and sound, Qin He and Gu Tuo breathed out a sigh of relief. Ji Ling, what exactly is going on? Qin He stepped forward and asked. Zichen, what exactly happened in the Void Sword realm? Gu Tuo asked Bai Zichen. However, Ji Ling and the others remained silent, their faces pale. Mu Xingzu fainted due to grief and fell into Ji Ling's embrace. After the disciples of the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest appeared safe and sound, undercurrents began to surge among the 7 great powers. The elders of the Consonant's Divine Palace, the 9 Profound Sect, and the 3 Imperial Palaces all felt increasingly nervous. Finally, the 9 Profound Sects Qin Yi and the others appeared. The majority of their disciples were safe and sound. This caused the 9 Profound Sects elder to breathe a sigh of relief. Soon after, Zither Fairy and the others appeared. Seeing that the people from the Consonant's Divine Palace were reduced by half, that charming woman's expression changed. In the end, only the disciples of the 3 Imperial Palaces had yet to appear. Why are Ji Yen and the others still not coming out? The elders of the 3 Imperial Palaces felt that the situation was bad. However, in the end, the space around the floating mountains stopped trembling, and the teleportation formation was completely closed. Yet, the disciples of the 3 Imperial Palaces still did not appear. This caused the expressions of the elders from the 3 Imperial Palaces to sink. You don't have to wait anymore. The 3 Imperial Palaces have been completely destroyed, Xian Hao said with a deep and cold voice. What? Hearing those words, the elders from the 3 Imperial Palaces nearly fainted. The surrounding elders were also unable to conceal their shock. Although the Little War Emperor and Little Spirit Emperor of the 3 Imperial Palaces had not come, Jian was also a genius. His strength could not be underestimated. However, Xian Hao actually said that the 3 Imperial Palaces had been completely destroyed. Including Jian, everyone had died. How could this not be shocking? Xian Hao, what exactly is going on? Xian Gu asked with a grave expression. This time, his limitless sword sect had suffered disastrous losses. Other than Xian Hao and Murong Ditian, everyone had actually died. Because of Yiguchen, Xian Hao said with a deep sigh. What? Yiguchen? Could it be that sword sect's Yiguchen? Didn't they say that his true qi was crippled? How is that possible? The elders from the 7 major powers all revealed shock in their eyes. They were unable to believe it. However, those words came from Xian Hao's mouth. With Xian Hao's status, it was impossible for him to lie. How is that possible? In the inner court, Gu Tuo's face was filled with shock. He had some conflicts with Yiguchen, so when he heard Xian Hao's words, Gu Tuo simply couldn't believe it. It's Yiguchen? Not to mention Gu Tuo, even Elder Qin He was dumbfounded. Soon after, the elders from the 7 major powers learned the ins and outs of the matter from the mouths of the disciples. This, however, the more they understood the truth of the matter, the more the astonishment on these elders' faces did not fade away. Yiguchen, what a good Yiguchen! The elders from the 3 Imperial Palaces had ashen faces as they gnashed their teeth in hatred. The 3 Imperial Palaces had been completely destroyed, so he couldn't escape punishment. Although Yi Guchen died in the end, the calamity he created was too terrifying. The middle-aged man from the saber-sealing monarch hall said coldly with an ugly expression. It's fine if he's dead, but if he's still alive, my Saint Origin Academy won't let him off. The golden-robed elder from the Saint Origin Academy said hatefully. Although Prince Yuani was still alive, he was considered half-crippled. Today's matter will shake the 7 major powers. Although they were lamenting, hating, and wringing their hands, all the disciples had seen Yi Guchen being swallowed by the spatial crack. There was no way he could have survived. Therefore, no matter how angry these elders were, they couldn't take revenge on a dead person. Besides, the opportunity that Mu Xingzu had obtained was already out of the Void Sword realm. Since Qin He, Gu Tuo, and the other inner court elders were present, Xian Hao and the others couldn't do anything to Mu Xingzu, so they could only give up. After that, the elders of these forces left with their disciples. However, it wasn't hard to imagine that what had happened in the Void Sword realm would spread across the 7 major powers and even the entire Saint Origin dynasty. However, just when everyone thought that Yi Guchen was dead, a voice suddenly rang out. Yi Guchen's body appeared in a strange place. Chapter 333. This strange place was incomparably dim, as if it had formed a small world of its own. However, in this place, the spiritual energy between heaven and earth was so dense that it left one speechless. On this piece of land, an ancient and complicated formation was still operating, as if it had existed for 1,000 years. Along with the operation of this ancient formation, the spiritual qi in the world was maintained at an extremely rich state. There was a ball of light above this ancient formation. Yi Guchen's body lay within the ball of light. His clothes were almost completely torn apart, and his body was charred black. Terrifying wounds covered his body, and his flesh was charred black. It was a shocking sight. On Yi Guchen's body, there was a pitch-black wooden tablet with the word 1 carved on it. This was the mysterious wooden tablet that Yi Guchen had bought with 10,000 crystal jades in the market of the 100 Broken Cities. It was also this wooden tablet that had released this ball of light and transported Yi Guchen here. Time passed silently. Yi Guchen's vitality had almost completely disappeared, and only a breath remained. Yi Guchen's injuries were too severe this time, and he was at the center of the collision between the 2 types of strange lightning. Therefore, he had suffered the greatest impact. Even now, one could see purple lightning and silver lightning shooting out of Yi Guchen's body from time to time, erupting into a series of sparks. Originally, with Yi Guchen's cultivation, he would have died without a doubt. However, Yi Guchen had used his physical body to withstand the impact of the extreme void profound lightning in the area of the lightning tide. Under the influence of this impact, Yi Guchen's body had a certain degree of resistance to the extreme void profound lightning. Not only that, Yi Guchen had also been baptized by the Fortune Golden Pool. In the end, he had even been tempered by the Golden Body Elixir. Under these various conditions, Yi Guchen had managed to retain a trace of life. At this moment, if one could look into Yi Guchen's body, one would see the purple nether lightning and the extreme void profound lightning, these 2 types of strange lightning, ceaselessly wreaking havoc in Yi Guchen's meridians, bones, and internal organs, causing them to be charred black. However, there was still a large amount of golden body fluid. Every time Yi Guchen's body was injured by the mutated lightning, the golden body elixir would refine, nourish, and heal the wounds. Yi Guchen's physical body was also greatly tempered by the repeated destruction and healing. One could even vaguely see a greenish-gold luster flashing on the surface of his skin. This meant that Yi Guchen's indestructible body was transforming into a flawless body. Rumble. The ancient array continued to operate, and the rich spiritual energy of the world seeped into Yi Guchen's body bit by bit, allowing his withered meridians to recover. Yi Guchen was in a coma for almost half a month. In this half a month, the Saint Origin dynasty was stirred up again. As the Saint Origin dynasty's treasured land, the Void Sword realm attracted everyone's attention. In this trip to the Void Sword realm, many of the 7 major forces suffered heavy losses, and even Xian Hao was injured. Not only that, the 3 palaces were completely destroyed, and no one survived. This news was like a huge rock falling into the ocean, causing huge waves. The 7 major forces were all shaken. When the truth was finally revealed, the name of the sword sex Yiguchen once again shook the entire dynasty. Yiguchen's reputation was at its peak after the battle in the Infinite Wasteland Plain. However, as the news of Yiguchen being crippled spread out, Yiguchen's reputation gradually fell. Although it wasn't to the extent that no one cared, it was still a lot weaker. This time, when the news was spread, Yiguchen once again shook the world. In the sword pavilion, he suppressed Xian Hao and took away half of the sword arts. In the pill hall, his talent test shook the heavens and earth, and even Xian Hao was not comparable to him. After that, when Mu Xingzu was besieged, Yiguchen single-handedly blocked hundreds of elites with his sword, which left everyone speechless. That shocking battle record of killing hundreds of people with a single sword shocked everyone, and they were all amazed by the terror of the sword sect. In the end, Yiguchen even sacrificed himself, colliding with the strange lightning and unleashing a destructive lightning tide, killing hundreds of elites in one fell swoop. Such courage, such means, such boldness at the same time, it shocked everyone, and at the same time, it also made them admire him. Of course, the forces that suffered from it were filled with anger and hatred. However, Yiguchen being swept into the spatial turbulence was witnessed by everyone. Therefore, even if they were resentful, they had nowhere to vent their anger. However, there were some elites among these forces who spread the news. In the 3 palaces, someone said the words of the Little War Emperor after hearing the news. Dian has 1/10 of my strength. It's not bad that Yiguchen was able to kill him. In the Saber-Sealing Monarch Palace, one of the 3 sabers, the strongest demonic saber, Leng Ju, said, even if Yiguchen doesn't die, he will hate my demonic saber. LV Qinghan of the Consonant's Divine Palace said, it's a pity that I haven't seen the sword sect. I'm curious, what kind of demeanor does such a sword cultivator have? When the elites of the major forces heard the news, they more or less paid attention to Yiguchen again. Unfortunately, in their eyes, Yiguchen was already a dead person. However, the atmosphere in the sword sect's forest of pagodas was somewhat gloomy. Mu Xingzu woke up 3 days later. Her face was pale, and she was still in a daze. Unconsciously, she would walk to the bamboo forest where Yiguchen had taught her swordsmanship. She raised her head and looked at the falling bamboo leaves, crying silently. As for Ji Ling, Chu Qingqi, and the others, although they wanted to comfort her, they didn't know what to say. When Yan Wushuang heard the news at the first peak of the inner sect, she was neither happy nor sad. She couldn't describe what she was feeling. She walked out of the sword sect pagoda. Feng Manlu stood alone outside the sword sect pagoda's corridor. His expression was calm, and no one knew what he was thinking. Yan Wushuang took a deep breath and said, Uncle Feng, do you know the news? Feng Manlu's figure slowly landed in front of Yan Wushuang with a complicated expression. If what Yiguchen did in the Void Sword realm is true, then Shuang will also admire him, Yan Wushuang said. Do you believe that he's dead? Feng Manlu suddenly asked. Uncle Feng, even you don't want to face reality? As an inner sect disciple, Yiguchen died to protect Mu Xingzu and the others. It's indeed respectable, so Shuang won't be happy, but he's dead. Then, Uncle Feng, your successor, Yan Wushuang gritted her teeth. She thought that since Yiguchen was dead, the only person Feng Manlu could rely on was her. Shuang, there are many things that are uncertain. Moreover, there's still time before the battle at the top of the Forbidden City. Let's put this matter aside for now. Feng Manlu shook his head slightly. Uncle Feng, he's already dead. Why won't you change your mind? Right now, only I, Yan Wushuang, have the strength to become your successor and head to the Forbidden Violet Peak to fight against Prime Sovereign. Yan Wushuang couldn't take it anymore and shouted. Shuang, you're naturally strong and you don't lose to men. This is both a strength and a weakness. Sooner or later, you'll suffer because of this. Feng Manlu sighed deeply and turned to enter the Sword Sect Pagoda. Outside the Sword Sect Pagoda, Yan Wushuang clenched her slender hands so tightly that her knuckles turned white. How am I inferior to Yiguchen? Even if he's dead, Uncle Feng still won't let me become your successor. Yan Wushuang couldn't bear it, and the aura of the 9 changes of the divine soul spread out uncontrollably. It took a long time for Yan Wushuang to calm down her fluctuating emotions. Uncle Feng, time will prove everything. The inner sect ranking battle is about to begin. If Yiguchen doesn't appear by then you can completely give up. I'll maintain the first place of the inner sect and prove to you that Shuang is capable. Yan Wushuang's tone was firm and her beautiful eyes flashed with a resolute light. She muttered to herself and turned to leave. While the various forces were shocked by what had happened in the Void Sword realm, the eyelids of Yiguchen, who was in the middle of the ancient formation in that strange place, trembled slightly as he finally woke up. Chapter 334. You're not dead yet? Yiguchen's hoarse voice came out of his mouth. He forced his heavy eyelids open and saw this strange place. Where is this? Yiguchen was momentarily dazed. In fact, he did not fear death. That was what Yiguchen thought the moment he was sucked into the spatial rift. It was a pity that he had yet to reach the peak of the sword Dao. Death is not scary. What's scary is that my sword has yet to reach the Dao. Yiguchen only had this thought in his mind at that time. However, just as Yiguchen felt that he was about to be torn apart by the spatial turbulence, he suddenly sensed that the mysterious broken wooden tablet in his origin ring was trembling slightly. It was also at that critical moment that Yiguchen took out this pitch-black wooden tablet. After that, Yiguchen fainted due to his heavy injuries. When he woke up, he was already here. Could it be that this wooden tablet needs to be activated by the power of space in order to be effective? No wonder there was no reaction no matter how I probed before. Yiguchen came to a realization. The thing that was least lacking in the spatial rift was the power of space. It was also in such an environment that the pitch-black wooden tablet's effect was unexpectedly activated and turned into a ball of light that transported Yiguchen to this place. Several hours passed after Yiguchen woke up. As the rich spiritual energy of heaven and earth seeped into Yiguchen's body, his body could finally move temporarily. This time, I'm really in a sorry state. Yiguchen laughed bitterly. His condition was very bad and his injuries were very serious. However, when Yiguchen looked around, he discovered that this was a large formation. Could this be an earth-level spirit gathering formation? Yiguchen said with a strange look in his eyes. With Yiguchen's current understanding of formations, he knew that formations were divided into 3 levels: heaven, earth, and mortal. Disregarding everything else, Yiguchen's own body contained an earth-level spirit design, the sword formation of the 6 paths of Azura. However, with Yiguchen's current cultivation base, he was unable to activate this earth-level array. However, the ancient and complicated spirit formation before him was definitely not a mortal-level spirit formation. It could only be an earth-level spirit formation. Yiguchen thought of the word 1 engraved on the black wooden tablet. Could it be that this strange place is the ancient Void Sword sect's hidden practice place in a small space, so there is an earth-level spirit gathering array, and this wooden token is the token to enter this place? Yiguchen was enlightened and immediately understood the cause and effect. Furthermore, the word 1 on this wooden plaque should represent the best place for cultivation, which is this earth-level spirit gathering array. Yiguchen's eyes grew brighter and brighter. He was certain that there was more than one such wooden plaque. It was only because other people could not detect the use of this wooden plaque that they sold it to the vendor. And Yiguchen, if he had not been involved in the space turbulence, he certainly would not have known the use of this wooden plaque. It's a blessing in disguise. Yiguchen's mouth evoked a faint arc. The earth-level spirit gathering array was an excellent place for cultivation. Not to mention the Saint Origin dynasty, even in the big forces of the South Horizon region, the earth-level spirit gathering array was not something that could be arranged casually. The consumption of manpower and material resources was very large. And perhaps only those geniuses of the big forces were qualified to use the earth-level spirit gathering array. For Yiguchen, This was an absolutely great opportunity. Let's heal first. Yiguchen grabbed a lot of healing pills from the bronze furnace and refined them into his body. In addition to the vigorous spiritual energy gathered by the spirit gathering array, it was only a matter of time before Yiguchen's injuries healed. In the process of healing, Yiguchen unexpectedly found that his physical body had become stronger. If it was said that the invincible Vajra body had only transformed by 30% before, then now the invincible Vajra body had transformed by 50%. In other words, half of Yiguchen's invincible Vajra body had transformed into a flawless body. This was also a pleasant surprise. Yiguchen looked into his body, trying to find the reason. What surprised him was that the purple nether lightning and void profound lightning in his body, these two equally domineering types of lightning, should have been like fire and water. However, during this long period of collision, these two types of heavenly lightning actually gradually merged together. Gradually, they turned into silver-purple lightning. Yiguchen was a little confused. Previously, he used the collision of lightning only because he was forced into a desperate situation. Even he did not expect that the lightning would undergo such a change and slowly merge together. But it was obvious that the merged silver-purple lightning was more powerful than the purple nether lightning and void profound lightning. In fact, Yiguchen felt that even Xianhao's ninth heaven profound lightning was not as powerful as this silver-purple lightning. With this lightning, I have hope of a breakthrough. Yiguchen took a deep breath and began to heal his injuries. And in this healing process, the merging of the two types of lightning also became faster and faster. Finally, from Yiguchen's body, rumbling sounds could be heard from time to time. The ripples of lightning were more powerful than any single type of lightning. After another 2 days, with the support of the Earth-grade Spirit Gathering Array, Yiguchen's injuries had not completely healed, but they were about half healed. As long as I can make a breakthrough and undergo a new transformation, my injuries will be healed immediately. Yiguchen's eyes were clear. He did not intend to rest anymore and directly wanted to make a breakthrough. I have waited for this day for too long. Only my own strength is the most real. An aura rose from Yiguchen's body. It was a kind of resolute will that belonged to the strong. He no longer hesitated and began to refine the strange lightning. Refining strange lightning was an extremely dangerous thing to do, but Yiguchen's body had been baptized by the void profound lightning and the two types of strange lightning had existed in his body for a long time. Therefore, Yiguchen did not encounter too much of a problem with this refinement. Finally, after another day, the two types of strange lightning finally merged together and completely transformed into a silver-purple lightning. And Yiguchen just happened to completely refine this silver-purple lightning and make it his own. Yiguchen slowly raised his hand. Between his fingers, purple lightning first darted out, and then silver lightning burst forth. Yiguchen's mind moved and the two types of strange lightning merged together, turning into a silver-purple lightning that was extremely powerful. After refining the strange lightning, Yiguchen could freely merge or separate the two types of strange lightning. It was very convenient. Unfortunately, after the two types of strange lightning completely merged, the destructive force of the collision no longer existed. The strange lightning formed by the merging of two types of strange lightning will be called the purple void profound lightning. Yiguchen thought to himself, purple void profound lightning, purple void profound lightning. When combined, it was just right to call it the purple void profound lightning. Since the strange lightning has been refined, it's time to tear the seal of the Qi. Yiguchen's eyes surged with a bright light. Gu Xiaoyang, you didn't expect this, did you? You thought you could cripple me, but now, I'm even stronger than before. One day, I'll let you taste something 10,000 times more painful than sealing your Qi. Yiguchen did not hesitate and directly used the merged purple void profound lightning to attack his Qi. This was the moment to tear the seal. Chapter 335. In the Strange Land, inside the Earth-class Spirit Gathering Array. Yiguchen activated the purple void mystic lightning in his body and attacked his Qi vessel with all his might. Outside his Qi vessel, The threads released by the soul star spirit-devouring parasite overlapped and sealed the entire chi vessel. If it were any other ordinary martial artist, they would be powerless and helpless in this situation. Even if they had the exotic lightning, they would not dare to use it to tear the seal. This was because even if ordinary warriors could use the exotic lightning to tear the seal, the exotic lightning would explode and destroy the entire chi vessel after entering the chi vessel. However, Yiguchen was different. Yiguchen cultivated the mysterious 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra. The 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra had 9 tribulations. Each tribulation had great risks, but as long as one could survive it, the gains would be indescribable. Rumble. The purple void mystic lightning formed by the fusion of 2 exotic lightnings was extremely powerful. The cocoon formed by the threads trembled and the power of stars overflowed from its surface. Gu Xiaoyang's Eye of Stars is quite mysterious. It can produce such a parasite to seal the chi vessel. Yiguchen frowned slightly. Even with the power of the purple void mystic lightning, it could not break the seal in one strike. Again! Yiguchen's eyes flashed with cold lightning. The purple void mystic lightning in his body seemed to boil as it surged towards the sealed chi vessel. Thrice. Yiguchen's body was like a heavenly drum, constantly rumbling. Every time the sound was heard, his body would shoot out silver-purple lightning. If not for the Earth-class spirit gathering array being extremely sturdy, the overflowing lightning would have been enough to tear the Earth apart. Rumble. Another rumble sounded. The sealing cocoon, which was formed by the silver threads, finally began to slowly split open a small crack. Within it, the soul star spirit devouring parasite seemed to have sensed danger and let out a sharp cry. Swoosh! Threads were spat out from the parasite's mouth again, trying to close the crack. Wishful thinking. Yiguchen activated the purple void mystic lightning and sent it towards the crack. Rumble! Lightning swirled around and flashed. After an instant of rumbling, the silver sealing cocoon was finally completely torn apart. Along with the release of the seal, a wave of horrifying genuine qi gushed out from Yiguchen's qi. Bang! It was as if a tornado had been set off in this strange place. A terrifying storm of true energy swept out from Yiguchen's body. Even Yiguchen could no longer suppress it. He raised his head to the sky and let out a long howl. Boom! Terrifying golden true qi gushed out from his qi sea like a vast ocean. Even though the gu venomous insect absorbed Yiguchen's vital energy every day, it was still unable to dry up. This was the terrifying part of the Sea of Qi. If I don't transcend the tribulation now, then when? Yiguchen growled. Without hesitation, he drew the purple void mysterious lightning into his qi sea. In an instant, a violent rumble once again shook the heavens and the earth, and the clouds and the 9 clouds were stirred up. Rumble. Within Yiguchen's body, the storm caused by the golden true qi was once again filled with the power of silver-purple lightning. The terrifying golden true qi mixed with the power of lightning caused the storm to turn into a thunderstorm that swept across the heavens and earth. If this scene was seen by others, they would definitely be shocked to the extreme. Boom! Within Yiguchen's qi sea, the purple void mysterious lightning surged. It collided with the golden true qi and exploded. Even Yiguchen's body shook and he spat out a mouthful of blood. The pain of tearing one's qi sea was worse than being sliced into pieces. Even with Yiguchen's sword demon nature, his forehead was drenched in cold sweat. His entire body was trembling slightly, as if he was resisting the extreme pain. I've been silent for so long. How can I stop here? Yiguchen's eyes shone so brightly that it seemed as if they could split the heavens. A resolute thought burst forth. That was the conviction of the sword faction. That was the conviction of the sword demon. I want to use my sword to sweep across the heavens and wipe out all injustice. Only strength can allow me to stand at the peak of Sword Dao. Qi Si spiritual tribulation, break for me. Yiguchen roared madly, as if he wanted to shout at the gods and Buddhas of the 9 heavens. Rumble. The golden qi si within Yiguchen's body surged wildly. However, the 3rd spiritual tribulation of the qi si was the most difficult to pass. It was also the most dangerous. Even though Yiguchen had been preparing for a long time and had accumulated for a long time, it was still difficult for him to break through. The intense pain of being torn apart caused Yiguchen's lips to turn slightly pale. However, in his heart, the conviction to step onto the peak of Sword Dao was still supporting him. At this moment, within Yiguchen's body, a dazzling sword radiance suddenly appeared as if it had been summoned. It directly slashed towards the Qi Si. Yiguchen was greatly shocked. That sword radiance was one of the 3 sword radiances that Yiguchen had obtained after leaving a mark on the one-sword cliff. Yiguchen recalled the words left behind by the 8th generation sword master, Yi Tianxing, when he had obtained the opportunity. This sword radiance will help you when you break through. And now Yiguchen was about to break through. Just as the sword radiance slashed into the Qi Si, a cracking sound similar to that of glass shattering could be heard. As the cracking sound was heard, Yiguchen's entire golden Qi Si exploded with a loud bang. Boom! An indescribable golden wave of true Qi surged out from Yiguchen's body. The shattering of the golden Qi Si was not truly shattering. Instead, it was standing after the shattering. After the Qi Si shattered, an even more terrifying wave of true Qi gathered in Yiguchen's dantian. That wave of true Qi was vast and boundless, as if it contained the entire world. Boom! At this moment, even the Earth-level spirit gathering formation seemed to have been summoned, and it began to operate even more rapidly with a rumble. The terrifying spirit Qi in the surroundings was like 100 rivers converging into the sea, all of it converging into Yiguchen's dantian. 1,000 feet, 2,000 feet, 3,000 feet. The new Qi Si in Yiguchen's body was rapidly forming. In the end, Yiguchen's dantian did not even look like a golden Qi Si, but like a real vast ocean. Boom! At a certain moment, a violent roar came from Yiguchen's body, and a vast and boundless golden Qi Si was completely formed. The limit of the Qi Si had been broken through. As the Qi Si surged, it was like a huge wave sweeping across the sky. Yiguchen stretched out his hand and slightly activated the true Qi in his Qi Si. An extremely vast wave of true Qi surged out from within. Boom! An extremely vigorous golden true Qi burst out with a loud bang, as if a golden true dragon had emerged from the sea. Is this the limit of 100,000 feet Qi Si? Even Yiguchen was shocked when he felt the nearly endless true Qi in his dantian. Yiguchen was even certain that his true Qi would not be depleted even if he used the 1,000 Deities Tribulation Sword technique now. Even the second move, Life Fall, could be used more than once by Yiguchen in a short period of time. As for sword techniques like the God-slaying sword technique, which consumed a lot of true Qi, it was like sprinkling water to the limit of the Qi Si. The amount of true Qi I have now far exceeds when I took the Mad Demon Blood Ignition Elixir. Yiguchen's eyes were very bright. His current state was even better than when he took the Mad Demon Blood Ignition Elixir. After completely overcoming the spirit tribulation in his Qi Si, Yiguchen's physical injuries were almost completely healed. This was also the benefit of breaking through. At the same time, Yiguchen also learned about the third tribulation after the spirit tribulation in his Qi Si. Of course, compared to understanding the third tribulation, Yiguchen had more important things to do now. That was to break through to the divine soul realm. Yiguchen went from the perfect physical body to the limit of the Qi Si. Every stage of his cultivation could be said to be perfect. Only after breaking through the limit of the Qi Si could Yiguchen break through to the divine soul realm. Yiguchen had to lay down the perfect foundation for himself at every step of his cultivation. Gu Xiaoyang, Xian Hao Yan Wushuang. As long as I have the strength, I can break through these obstacles. Yiguchen flipped his wrist and took out the Heavenly Soul Infant Soul Elixir from the bronze alchemy furnace. With the Heavenly Soul Infant Soul Elixir, how many changes can I break through to? Yiguchen's lips curled into a faint smile as he swallowed the Heavenly Soul Infant Soul Elixir. In the next moment, a similarly vast wave of soul power spread out from Yiguchen's mind. The divine soul realm had officially begun to break through. Chapter 336. Inside the Earth-level spirit gathering array. After Yi Guchen consumed the infant soul elixir, his mind buzzed. A stream of extremely pure and vigorous soul power gushed into Yi Guchen's mind. Yi Guchen's soul power wasn't weak, and he had refined many spirit elixirs. Later on, he even received the undying soul pearl from Ying Ning. To put it bluntly, even if Yi Guchen hadn't broken through to the divine soul realm, his soul power wasn't any weaker than an ordinary divine soul realm expert. The only difference was that Yi Guchen hadn't condensed his sea of consciousness yet. But now, Yi Guchen had accumulated a lot of energy and could have broken through to the divine soul realm. Moreover, he had taken the infant heavenly soul elixir, which was a divine elixir. Rumble. In Yi Guchen's mind, it was as if the heavens and earth had been created. Terrifying soul power swirled like a whirlpool. Above the whirlpool, the sub-pearl of the immortal soul pearl also released a vigorous soul power to help Yi Guchen condense his sea of consciousness. Vaguely, the embryonic form of his sea of consciousness had been formed. The infant soul elixir had the effect of helping to condense one's sea of consciousness. Therefore, Yi Guchen didn't spend much effort to condense his sea of consciousness. As the sea of consciousness gradually formed, Yi Guchen could clearly feel that his five senses had become extremely sharp. It was like a dusty mirror that had been polished. Yi Guchen could now see everything and listen to everything. Even the slightest movement couldn't escape his soul perception. Moreover, this was only the initial stage of the sea of consciousness. As time passed, Yi Guchen took out a large number of heavenly soul elixirs, spirit elixirs, and other elixirs that helped to cultivate soul power. He swallowed them like pouring beans into his mouth. Rumble. In Yi Guchen's mind, the sea of consciousness formed by his soul power had been completely formed. At this moment, Yi Guchen's body suddenly shook. A transparent and terrifying soul power ripple spread out in all directions. As his spiritual strength spread out, a powerful spiritual pressure was also released. This kind of soul pressure would affect anyone whose soul power was lower than Yi Guchen's. Even some Qi refinement realm martial artists would directly kneel under this pressure. But Yi Guchen's breakthrough was obviously not that simple. The sea of consciousness in his mind was still spinning. After the sea of consciousness completed a full cycle, Yi Guchen's mind buzzed once more. Divine soul transformation, breakthrough. However, this was only the beginning and far from the end. With the effects of the heavenly soul nascent soul pill and the support of the many treasure pills, Yi Guchen's spiritual energy was far from reaching its limit. His sea of consciousness rotated for the second time. Boom. Second divine soul transformation, breakthrough. Boom. Third transformation of the divine soul, breakthrough. Boom. Fourth transformation of the divine soul, breakthrough. Such a terrifying breakthrough speed would definitely scare a group of so-called cultivation geniuses to death in the outside world. Even if Xianhao saw this, he would definitely be unable to conceal his shock. He had spent a few years to cultivate the 9 transformation of the divine soul. It was not achieved overnight. But Yi Guchen was different. He had been accumulating for a long time. Since the sea of Qi in the infinite plane was sealed, Yi Guchen had been accumulating his strength and accumulating it. Now that he had the help of the heavenly soul nascent soul pill, Yi Guchen had to break through. In the end, Yi Guchen's cultivation stopped at the 6th transformation of the divine soul. If the news of him breaking through from the Qi refinement realm to the 6th transformation of the divine soul spread, not to mention the Saint Origin dynasty, even the big forces in the Nantian region would find it unbelievable. Unless he was a real top genius or a supreme talent above the 9th grade, it was impossible to have such a cultivation speed. Is this the power of the 6th transformation of the divine soul? Yi Guchen slowly raised his hand and activated the genuine Qi in his body. Then, he released his spiritual energy from the sea of consciousness to control the genuine Qi. As the golden genuine Qi surged, it condensed into a small golden sword that seemed to be solid. This was the symbol of the divine soul realm, the genuine Qi condensation. However, if one wanted to condense the genuine Qi like Yi Guchen, one would need to be at least at the 8th transformation of the divine soul. But Yi Guqin, who was at the 6th transformation of the Divine Soul, had already reached this level. This Heavenly Soul Nascent Soul pill is rumored to allow one to break through to the 9th transformation of the Divine Soul. Why did I only break through to the 6th transformation? Yi Guqin was a little confused. He pondered for a while and suddenly understood. Yi Guqin could be said to be perfect in every realm. Perfect body, extreme sea of qi, etc. Therefore, after Yi Guqin broke through to the Divine Soul realm, his sea of consciousness naturally condensed in the direction of perfection. As a result, the Heavenly Soul Nascent Soul pill could not help Yi Guqin. In order to make the sea of consciousness perfect, the consumption was too great. If it was an ordinary warrior, one Heavenly Soul Nascent Soul pill was enough to let him reach the 9th transformation of the Divine Soul. But Yi Guqin couldn't do that. Although I have not reached the 9th transformation of the Divine Soul, my soul power is not weaker than any 9th transformation of the Divine Soul. Moreover, as long as I can pass the 3rd calamity, the sea of consciousness soul calamity. Yi Guqin's eyes flashed. 9 Calamity Heart Sutra. The first calamity, blood calamity of the physical body, was to forge a perfect body. The second calamity, spiritual calamity of the sea of qi, was to open up the extreme sea of qi. And the third calamity was the sea of consciousness soul calamity. The sea of consciousness soul calamity is also divided into 3 minor calamities. After passing the first minor calamity, one can condense the small perfection of the sea of consciousness. After passing the second minor calamity, one can condense the great perfection of the sea of consciousness. If one can pass the third minor calamity, then one can condense the chaotic sea of consciousness. Yi Guqin's eyes shone brightly. The chaotic sea of consciousness. This was what Yi Guqin could obtain after passing the sea of consciousness soul calamity. Perfect physical body, limitless sea of qi, chaotic sea of consciousness. If I can successfully cultivate all of them, how strong will I be? Yi Guqin clenched his fist, his eyes filled with anticipation. And Yi Guqin knew that if he could successfully cultivate the chaotic sea of consciousness, in the future, if he could reach the stage of condensing the primordial spirit, he could condense the chaotic primordial spirit. The immortal soul pearl allowed Senior Yingning to possess the immortal primordial spirit. What's the use of the chaotic primordial spirit? How is it compared to the immortal primordial spirit? Yi Guqin was very curious. The secrets of the primordial spirit were also very interesting. But after thinking for a while, Yi Guqin shook his head with a smile. Not to mention the chaotic primordial spirit, even the chaotic sea of consciousness was a little far away from him. The most important thing now is to find a way to pass the first minor calamity of the sea of consciousness soul calamity. The thing I need is a rare heaven and earth fire that can burn the soul. Where can I find it? Yi Guqin was thinking. Rare heaven and earth fire was originally a rare thing. And a rare heaven and earth fire that could burn the soul was even rarer. Rumor has it that the fire tribe of the barbarian tribe in the land of 5 elements has more than one rare heaven and earth fire. Is it possible to obtain a rare heaven and earth fire that can burn the soul in the fire tribe? Yi Guqin suddenly thought. But it was useless to think about it now. Just as Yi Guqin was about to find a way to leave this place, there was a sudden movement from his dantian. It's this goo worm, and the sword of thunder calamity? Yi Guqin was surprised. Chapter 337. Inside Yi Guqin's dantian. The goo worm in the endless limit qi sea was emitting bright starlight all over its body. This starlight was like a transformation. In addition, outside the qi sea, the thunder calamity sword that had been dormant in his dantian began to vibrate again. With this tremor, Yi Guqin suddenly felt that the earth-level qi gathering formation beneath his feet was operating even more rapidly. Then this spirit-gathering formation started to operate at full power. A terrifying amount of heaven and earth spirit qi gathered towards the thunder calamity sword in Yi Guqin's dantian. This scene caused Yi Guqin to be stunned for a moment. However, there was a faint trace of joy in his eyes. Every time there was a change in the Thunder Calamity Sword, it was a blessing for Yi Guqin. Could it be? Yi Guqin had a guess in his heart. The boundless spirit chi produced by the Earth-level spirit gathering formation was directly absorbed by the Thunder Calamity Sword in Yi Guqin's dantian. As the spiritual energy flowed in, some small words gradually appeared on the ancient jet-black sword body. Could it be the third move of Thousand Deity Tribulation? Yi Guqin sat cross-legged on the ground and calmed his mind. The supreme sword technique Thousand Deity Tribulation was Yi Guqin's strongest sword technique. Even the supreme Great King level sword technique Great Void Sword Wave was not as high as Thousand Deity Tribulation. It should be known that with the second move of Thousand Deity Tribulation, Common Life Fall, Yi Guqin could cross 2 realms and injure Gu Xiaoyang, who was at life and death chamber. Just this point alone was enough to prove the power of Thousand Deity Tribulation. However, Yi Guqin felt that it was a pity. Even with the spiritual energy provided by the Earth-grade spirit gathering formation, it could only make some blurry words appear on the body of the sword, making it hard to distinguish. It seems that it is still not enough. The Thunder Calamity Sword needs to absorb more and stronger energy to manifest the third move of Thousand Deity Tribulation. Yi Guqin shook his head slightly, but he wasn't disappointed. If there was an opportunity, the third move would be revealed sooner or later. There was no need to rush. After the Lightning Tribulation Sword finished absorbing the spirit energy from the spirit gathering formation, Yi Guqin turned his attention to the goo worms in his Qi. Goo worms could not even absorb 1,000 feet of Qi. Now that his Qi had broken through to the limit of 100,000 feet, Yi Guqin naturally would not care about this goo. But now, the goo worms seemed to have undergone some shocking changes. Yi Guqin looked into his sea of qi and saw that after the goo devoured a large amount of true qi, a crack had appeared on its back. This is... Yi Guqin was slightly surprised. As the goo worm absorbed more and more golden qi, the crack on its back also became bigger and bigger. Finally, a bright butterfly flapped its wings and flew out from the crack on the goo worm's back. This is... Yi Guqin was momentarily stunned. Although he had previously guessed that this spirit star-devouring goo worm might undergo some changes after absorbing enough true qi. But Yi Guqin did not expect such a transformation to occur. The dazzling silver butterfly's body shone with light, and its wings were covered with star-like patterns. Then, this silver butterfly flapped its wings and flew out of the sea of qi. In the end, it flew into Yi Guqin's sea of consciousness. What's going on? Yi Guqin was extremely surprised. And that silver butterfly flapped its wings again, and a translucent silver soul wave rippled out. After Yi Guqin sensed this soul wave, he actually received some information. This butterfly is called the Meteorite Demonic Soul Butterfly. It is a life spirit that can protect the sea of consciousness. The Meteorite Demonic Soul Butterfly can block any soul attack of the enemy. Not only that, it can also release star soul waves to attack the sea of consciousness of others. The Meteorite Demonic Soul Butterfly's soul wave transmitted such information. This made Yi Guqin surprised and delighted. After a warrior cultivated to the divine soul realm, the sea of consciousness of the soul became a very important means. For example, Mu Xingzu released the soul sword essence with the immortal soul pearl and directly destroyed the sea of consciousness of hundreds of people. And if these people had a protective spiritual object in their sea of consciousness, then they would not have died so easily. But this Meteorite Demonic Soul Butterfly was not only a spiritual object, but also a life spirit. In other words, unless it was some special soul attack, the Meteorite Demonic Soul Butterfly could block some ordinary soul pressure and attack. This was a great opportunity. Not only that, but Yi Guqin could also urge the Meteorite Demonic Soul Butterfly to release star soul waves to attack the sea of consciousness of others. Presumably, even Gu Xiaoyang did not know that the spirit star-devouring goo worm would undergo such a transformation after absorbing enough true qi. Gu Xiaoyang, you thought you brought me a disaster, but now it has become my opportunity. Yi Guqin's eyes lit up. In his sea of consciousness, the Meteorite Demonic Soul Butterfly stayed on the immortal soul pearl and absorbed the pure soul power in it. Yiguchen looked carefully and found that there was a bright spot like a star on the meteorite demonic soul butterfly's wings. And as it absorbed the soul power, there seemed to be the embryonic form of a second star spot faintly appearing. Could it be that this meteorite demonic soul butterfly is still in its infancy and can still grow in the future? Thinking of this, Yiguchen was also surprised. Not only was it a spiritual object, but it was also a life spirit that could grow and evolve. Even in the entire South Horizon region, there were not many geniuses who could own such a rare spiritual object. After that, Yiguchen observed for a while and was relieved. Perhaps it was because the meteorite demonic soul butterfly relied on Yiguchen's true chi to transform, so this butterfly was also quite close to Yiguchen. It was absolutely impossible that Gu Xiaoyang had hidden something in it. After being completely relieved, Yiguchen allowed the meteorite demonic soul butterfly to absorb the soul power in his sea of consciousness. Anyway, his soul power was not inferior to that of an expert in the 9 transformations of the divine soul realm. He did not lack soul power at all. Next, I will leave this place. Presumably, everyone in the 7 major forces will think that I am dead. Yiguchen's eyes flashed with a faint light. The killing calamity that he had created would definitely cause a storm. If he was dead, it would be fine. But if the news that Yiguchen was alive spread out, it would definitely cause a great commotion. He would be a thorn in the side of many forces. But Yiguchen was not afraid at all. When he was in the Qi refinement realm, he dared to confront 3 heaven and earth spirit bridge experts. Now that his strength had increased, he was even more fearless. Now that I think about it, the inner yard ranking battle should be starting soon. Let's leave first. Yiguchen's eyes flashed as he looked for a way to leave. He did not want to miss the inner yard ranking battle. If he really missed it, he would have to give up his venerable cave abode. However, not long after, Yiguchen found a teleportation array in a remote place. Yiguchen tried to put the black wooden token in. The teleportation array suddenly lit up. The black wooden token released a ball of light that wrapped Yiguchen in it. Then, with a flash, Yiguchen's figure disappeared from the place. Chapter 338. 500 miles away from the floating mountain, in a desolate valley where monsters roamed freely. On the ground, a transportation array covered in yellow dust suddenly lit up. In the light, a ball of light appeared and dissipated in an instant, revealing Yiguchen's figure. He raised his hand slightly, and the wooden tablet in his hand that was already cracked and shattered completely turned into powder with a puff. This is a life bot with 10,000 crystal jades. Yiguchen sighed. Shaking his head slightly, Yiguchen stopped thinking about it. The only thing he needed to do now was to rush back to the Sword Sect's forest of pagodas. Where is this place? Yiguchen was stunned, and then the sea of consciousness in his mind suddenly churned. A wave of soul perception spread out like a tide. 50 feet, 10 feet, 100 feet. Yiguchen's soul perception range was still expanding. But if other soul experts were to see this, they would be so shocked that their eyeballs would fall out. For an ordinary soul expert, having a soul perception range of 10 feet was already good enough. Even an expert of the 6th transformation of the divine soul could only reach 20 to 30 feet. Even for a 9th transformation expert like Xian Hao, 100 feet was already the limit. And to maintain a 100 feet range, it would consume a lot of soul energy, so it couldn't be maintained for long. But Yiguchen, in the blink of an eye, his soul perception range had spread out to 150 feet. Finally, when it reached 200 feet, Yiguchen felt that he was about to reach his limit. My soul perception far surpasses that of ordinary soul experts, and if I can pass the first minor tribulation and cultivate the small perfection sea of consciousness, then what level will my soul perception reach? Yiguchen had just entered the divine soul realm, and was very curious about the soul perception methods of the divine soul realm. Yiguchen could clearly sense the ferocious aura of all kinds of demonic beasts after he spread his divine soul perception. These monsters were mostly 4th-rank monsters, but there were also a few ordinary 5th-rank monsters. Kill my way out. If Yiguchen was still in the Qi refinement realm, It would be troublesome to fall into this situation. But after breaking through to the 6th transformation of the Divine Soul realm, Yiguchen was completely unafraid of rank 4 monstrous beasts. He had just broken through and needed some demonic beasts to practice. In the worst-case scenario, with the vermilion bird wings, as long as he doesn't encounter a peak rank 5 demonic beast, his chances of escaping are still very high. Yiguchen used Shadow Step, his figure leaving behind an afterimage. His strength had increased greatly, and he had also improved significantly in all aspects. A rank 4 demonic beast, the Umbra Clouded Leopard, appeared in front of him. Its entire body emitted a ferocious aura. If it had been before, Yiguchen would have had to use some tricks to deal with such a monster. But now, Chila! Yiguchen directly stretched out his hand. Silver-purple void profound lightning gathered and rolled in his palm, forming a ball of lightning that directly shot towards the Umbra Cloud Leopard. Although Umbra Clouded Leopards were known for their speed, how could they be faster than lightning? Moreover, the Void Extreme Profound Bombs also possessed the extreme speed of shuttling through the void. Boom! The purple Void Profound Lightning hit the Umbra Clouded Leopard. This rank 4 monstrous beast directly trembled all over, its fur charred black, and it let out a miserable howl. Yiguchen swept forward, and with a simple sweep of his sword, the Umbra Clouded Leopard was beheaded. Hiss hiss. A rank 4 monstrous python stared at Yiguchen in the dark, then suddenly rushed out. I sensed you long ago. Yiguchen had a faint smile on his lips as he turned around and swung his sword. Void Sword Technique, 1,000-layered waves. Streaks of transparent sword waves swept out, and that rank 4 monstrous python was directly shaken to death. Just like that, Yiguchen killed his way out of the rank 4 monstrous beast horde. Sword light split the sky, true chi rumbled, and soul power surged. He was incomparably powerful as he swept out all the way. With his current strength, rank 4 monstrous beasts could hardly stop his footsteps. And just as Yiguchen swept through the monstrous beast barren valley, there was a gradually fiery atmosphere in the swordsmanship-seeking mountain range where the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest was located. Although some time ago, after learning that Yiguchen had fallen in the Void Sword realm, the entire Sword Sect Pagoda Forest was silent for a period of time. Especially those outer court disciples who were quite respectful of Yiguchen, they sighed all day long, regretting the fall of the Sword Sect. But after all, people had to look forward. Although they respected Yiguchen, they did not have a deep relationship with him, so as time passed, the silent atmosphere gradually dissipated. As for the inner court, their attitudes were very clearly divided into 2 groups. Led by Zichen, Wang Xiaotian, and the others, after Yiguchen's fall, they seemed to be relieved in their hearts. Even Wang Xiaotian, who had suffered the tragic treatment of the Divine Eagle, recovered a smile on his face. On the contrary, Qin Lin, who should be the happiest, was unexpectedly calm and did not have any joy. Originally, with her relationship with Yiguchen, Qin Lin should be very happy after hearing the news. But Qin Lin found that she was not as happy as she imagined. There was even a trace of pity. Especially when Qin Lin recalled Yiguchen strangling her jade neck and staring at her with cold eyes, it made her delicate body feel numb all over, as if she had been electrocuted. What's wrong with me? Qin Lin covered her flushed face with both hands, with a complicated expression on her face. As for the other side of the inner court, Jiling, Chu Qingqi, Yi Xie, and the others were a little depressed. However, the pain of these people was not even 1/10 of the pain in Mu Xingzu's heart. Because in the entire inner court, the one who had been with Yiguchen the longest and had the closest relationship with him was Mu Xingzu. Inner court number 5 Peak, within the bamboo forest. Mu Xingzu, dressed in a light green gauze dress, was leaning against the bamboo as usual, looking up at the bamboo leaves that filled the sky. She was not old, and originally had a trace of the naivety of a young girl. But at this moment, the smile on her face was completely gone. Her bright eyes were a little red and swollen, and there was a deep sadness in them. Mu Xingzu. Ji Ling, dressed in a small green robe, walked over from nearby. She looked at Mu Xingzu with a complicated expression on her face. Mu Xingzu did not seem to hear her, and continued to stare blankly at the falling bamboo leaves. Mu Xingzu, the inner court ranking competition is in 1 day. With your current talent and strength, it will not be difficult to get a good ranking. Ji Ling sighed. Mu Xingzu was still speechless. After a long while, Ji Ling shook her head slightly and said, "If Yiguchen was still here, he would not want to see you in such a dejected state." After saying this, Ji Ling turned around and left. Mu Xingzu's somewhat wooden eyes slowly turned. She took out the Aurora sword from her origin ring, and her small white hand lovingly stroked the blade. This was the mystical rune weapon that Yiguchen had taken out from the Thousand-Sword Forest and given to her. Mu Xingzu's wooden eyes gradually revealed a bit of light. "Senior brother Yi, Xingzhu will not let you down. Xingzhu will take first place in the inner court for you." In the past, Yiguchen had helped Mu Xingzu take first place in the outer court. And now, Mu Xingzu also wanted to take first place in the inner court for Yiguchen. She held the Aurora sword in her hand, and the tip of the sword swung. An incomparably vigorous wave of sword chi swept through the entire bamboo forest. At the same time, a powerful wave of soul energy also spread out. Mu Xingzu's cultivation had reached the 5th transformation of the godly soul. Chapter 339. On this day, the atmosphere within the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest was fervent. The annual inner court ranking competition was about to begin. To the disciples of the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest, the two most important competitions every year were the outer court and inner court ranking competitions. The outer court ranking competition was an opportunity for outer court disciples to enter the inner court. On the other hand, the inner court ranking competition was an opportunity for inner court elites to make a name for themselves. Not only that, the higher one's ranking in the inner court, the higher one's status would be, and the more cultivation resources one would obtain. Moreover, some disciples in the top 10 of the inner court even possessed various privileges. For example, ordinary inner court disciples had to go to the outer court regularly to instruct outer court disciples. However, with the rankings of Yiguchen and the others, they could completely avoid this obligation. Therefore, under the various benefits, these inner court disciples also desperately wanted to raise their rankings. On the other hand, those disciples that were ranked at the top were trying their best to stabilize their rankings. It was precisely because of this that the inner court ranking competition was extremely exciting. Every single inner court disciple would completely erupt with their strength. Moreover, this was a great opportunity to display themselves in the eyes of the various elders and those in authority. The inner court ranking competition was located on a square in the inner court. At this moment, the enormous square that could accommodate 10,000 people was already filled with a sea of people. Numerous inner court and outer court disciples were gathered here. Generally speaking, outer court disciples weren't qualified to enter the inner court. However, during the inner court ranking competition, outer court disciples were allowed to watch the competition, and it could be considered as an opportunity for them to learn. All 5,000 outer court disciples in the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest were present. It was naturally impossible for them to miss such a great opportunity to watch the competition. On the other hand, those inner court disciples were all eager to fight, and their eyes revealed excitement. After the Void Sword Realm this time, many inner court disciples obtained fortuitous encounters. I wonder if I can hold on to my 13th position. Yi Xie shook his head slightly in the crowd of inner court disciples. If even you can't hold on, then wouldn't I be at the bottom? Chu Qingqi sighed. If Yi Jianzong was here, I wonder where he would be? Yi Xie's eyes revealed a trace of disappointment. Although he and Yiguchen hadn't known each other for long, they were quite congenial. Sigh, if we compare Brother Yi who has consumed the mad demon burning blood pill, I'm afraid that only Bai Zichen and Yen Wushuang are able to fight with him in the inner academy. Chu Qingqi's gaze was complicated as he spoke. Bai Zichen, if it weren't for them standing by and watching, Yi Jianzong and Mu Xingzu wouldn't have been forced into such a desperate situation. Yi Xie said coldly. Don't say that. They're here. Chu Qingqi shook his head slightly. Not far away, a few figures calmly walked over. The person in the lead was dressed in white and looked extraordinarily handsome. It was Bai Zichen. Behind him, Wang Xiaotian, Li Lingxiao, Ting Jingshan, and the others walked over. It's Senior Bai Zichen. Is that senior brother Bai Zichen? He's so handsome. I heard that he was the one who left the mark on One Sword Cliff. That's right. I heard from the senior sisters in the inner court that the sword attack left behind by senior brother Bai Zichen is incomparably beautiful, causing one to shed tears. I want to experience it as well. Bai Zichen's appearance caused an uproar among the many outer academy disciples. Most of them were female disciples. Their beautiful eyes flickered with extraordinary splendor, and they wished that they could throw themselves at him. However, it was normal for them to have such thoughts. After all, regardless of appearance, strength, or the indifferent and otherworldly temperament that Bai Zichen revealed, it was fatal to these female disciples. Not to mention the female disciples of the outer court, even some of the geniuses of the inner court cast interested gazes at Bai Zichen. They had experienced the sword mark on One Sword Cliff. That kind of beautiful and sorrowful state caused these female disciples to sink into it and sigh endlessly. Bai Zichen was very indifferent when he sensed the gazes gathered on him from the surroundings. A faint smile hung on the corners of his mouth. A person's death is like an extinguished lamp. There's finally no one above me that can suppress me. Bai Zichen was very happy in his heart. In the past, besides Yan Wushuang, he was practically the most eye-catching person. Bai Zichen's strength was not much weaker than Yan Wushuang's. He did not mind that Yan Wushuang was above him. However, Yi Guchen's arrival was like a shadow that covered Bai Zichen's head. Yi Guchen's reputation as the sword sect far surpassed Bai Zichen's. Only now did Bai Zichen completely heave a sigh of relief after Yi Guchen's death. The only thing he needed to do next was to win Yan Wushuang's heart. Although the sword mark on One Sword Cliff is extremely profound, I've already comprehended at least 30% of it. However, even if it's only 30%, it's still my trump card. Even Yan Wushuang should be unable to block this sword strike. Bai Zichen's eyes flickered as he secretly calculated in his heart. His confidence came from his comprehension of the sword mark on One Sword Cliff. With this move as his trump card, Bai Zichen was very confident. Just as the entire square was in an uproar, two beautiful figures arrived from afar. One was a beautiful young girl in a small green gown with a ponytail. The other was a young girl in an ice silk skirt with an indifferent and arrogant expression. It was Ji Ling and Yan Wushuang. The appearance of the two young girls caused many male disciples in the inner and outer court to be dazed. For many of the outer court disciples, it was their first time seeing the daughter of the sect master who was rumored to possess extraordinary talent. However, the most attractive part of Yan Wushuang was not her exquisite face that contained an indifferent expression, but a pair of perfectly proportioned slender legs under the skirt. Those flawless legs that seemed to be carved from jade caused most of the male disciples to secretly swallow a mouthful of saliva. As if she felt many gazes land on her legs, Yan Wushuang's brows furrowed slightly. Humph! Following Yan Wushuang's cold snort, a powerful spiritual pressure from the 9 changes of the spirit landed on the square with a bang. Other than a few inner court disciples, most of the disciples were unable to stop themselves from retreating. There were even some outer court disciples with weaker cultivations that directly sat on the ground. Is this the strength of the number 1 in the inner court, Senior Sister Yan? Some outer court disciples revealed astonishment in their eyes. Ah, Wushuang, your temperament is still the same. Seeing Yan Wushuang's arrival, Bai Zichen's eyes lit up as he stepped forward and smiled faintly. Bai Zichen, it seems that you have gained quite a bit in the Void Sword realm this time. Yan Wushuang did not say anything about Bai Zichen calling her Wushuang. Bai Zichen's heart heated up when he saw that there was no disgust on Yan Wushuang's face. He knew that it was all because of the sword scar at the One Sword Cliff. That sword scar had moved Yan Wushuang, which was why she treated him specially. However, Bai Zichen did not mind. As long as he opened the heart of this young girl, he was not afraid that Yan Wushuang would not be moved by him. Just a little bit. Bai Zichen smiled warmly. Humph. Ji Ling, who was beside Yan Wushuang, revealed a disgusted expression when she heard Bai Zichen's words. She had already seen through Bai Zichen's character in the Void Sword realm. In order to not give Bai Zichen more opportunities to come into contact with Yan Wushuang, Ji Ling directly held Yan Wushuang's arm and said, Shuang, let's go over there and wait for the ranking battle to begin. Yes, Bai Zichen, I hope that you can bring me a surprise. After all, it has been a long time since I have met a worthy opponent in the same generation in the inner court. Yan Wushuang said faintly before she went to the other side with Ji Ling. Bai Zichen smiled and nodded, but there was a faint shadow in his eyes. Even Yi Guchen is not here. Ji Ling, don't tell me that you, a girl, want to obstruct me and Wushuang? Ridiculous. Bai Zichen said coldly in his heart. Chapter 340. As Yan Wushuang, Bai Zichen and the other top-ranked inner courtyard disciples arrived. The atmosphere of the entire square was also a boiling cauldron of voices, becoming more and more heated. The outer courtyard disciples and inner courtyard disciples were all gathered in one place. It was at this moment that Qing He, Gu Tuo, Shi Yun and the other inner courtyard elders arrived at the same time. The inner courtyard ranking battle was more important than the outer courtyard ranking battle. Hence, all the elders who did not have important matters to attend to had come to watch the battle. At this moment, two figures walked over from the distant horizon at almost the same time. One was a white-haired old man with an unfathomable aura that was as deep as the sea. It was First Elder Qiu Shan. The other was a handsome middle-aged man in plain clothes. It was naturally the lightless Sword King, Feng Manlu. The faces of the inner and outer courtyard disciples flushed with excitement when they saw the arrival of the two important figures from the Sword Sect's Tower Forest. In the past, only First Elder Qiu Shan would come to watch the inner courtyard ranking battle. Feng Manlu, on the other hand, was a loner who spent most of his time in seclusion in the Sword Sect Tower and did not care about worldly matters. It was rare for him to come to watch the battle. As for Sect Master Yanchanga, he was often away and naturally could not come. Uncle Feng, you really came. On the square, Yan Wushuang raised her head to look at Feng Manlu, her beautiful eyes flickering like stars. She believed that Feng Manlu had come to witness her strength. However, Feng Manlu, who was standing in the air, seemed to be looking into the distance with his empty black eyes. Not everyone can inherit the name of the Sword Sect. Yi Guchen, are you really dead? Feng Manlu sighed inwardly. He turned to look at Qiu Shan, his voice as calm as water. Qiu Shan, congratulations on stepping into the divine dwelling stage. Feng Manlu's words immediately silenced the noisy square. Then, gaze after gaze of shock fell on Qiu Shan's body. What? First Elder has broken through to the divine dwelling stage. That's great. The faces of the group of disciples flushed with excitement. Even Gu Tuo and the other elders were taken aback for a moment before their eyes were filled with joy. However, although Qing He and the other elders had smiles on their faces, their eyes were filled with worry. The current First Elder practically controlled the entire Sword Sect Pagoda Forest. Before Qiu Shan broke through to the divine dwelling stage, Feng Manlu was able to keep him in check. But Qiu Shan had already reached the divine dwelling stage, and his strength far surpassed experts who were half a step into the divine dwelling stage. Qing He could not help but look at Feng Manlu. However, Feng Manlu's expression remained calm. I can't hide it from you, Feng Manlu. Although Qiu Shan's hair and beard were all white, his face was bright and his eyes were as sharp as the cold stars. He had indeed broken into the divine dwelling stage. However, Qiu Shan found that even though he had broken through to the divine dwelling stage, he still didn't have the slightest confidence in facing Feng Manlu. Wind-sweeping building was like a bottomless well, making it impossible for people to see through it. Feng Manlu seemed to not mind that he was once a divine dwelling stage expert as he said with a faint smile, "Our Sword Sect's Pagoda Forest has another divine dwelling stage expert. It's naturally delightful." Let's hold the inner yard ranking battle first. Those little fellows are getting impatient. Qiu Shan took a deep look at Feng Manlu and said with a smile. Sure. Feng Manlu nodded with a smile. There was not the slightest bit of anger between the two, but they were already fighting in secret. Qiu Shan secretly thought, even though I've broken through to the divine dwelling stage, I still don't have the confidence to face you. Feng Manlu, what kind of strength are you hiding with your divine dwelling broken? Qiu Shan wanted to completely control the entire Sword Sex Pagoda forest, but Feng Manlu was a great obstacle. However, even though Qiu Shan had broken through to the divine dwelling stage, he still felt a little wary of Feng Manlu, who had comprehended the unity of man and sword. Qiu Shan shook his head slightly and temporarily put this matter aside. He looked towards the dense crowd below and said, "Disciples of the Sword Sex Pagoda Forest, the inner yard ranking battle will begin today. I hope that all the elites of the inner yard will be able to stand out." News from the disciples of the Great Desolate Mansion has come from the border of the Great Desolate Mansion. The barbarian race in the 5-element zone seems to be restless. After the inner yard ranking battle, I believe that some of you will head to the 5-element zone to fight against the totem warriors of the barbarian race, and even the chosen and saintesses. Qiu Shan's words immediately caused an uproar among the many inner and outer yard disciples below. They knew about the totem warriors of the barbarian race. As for the chosen and saintesses, they were the heaven prides of the barbarian race. In the past battles between the 7 great forces and the barbarian race, generally speaking, only the top heaven prides of the 7 great forces could contend against the chosen and saintesses of the barbarian race. For example, Xian Hao, Yan Wushuang, the Little War Emperor, Lv Qinghan and others had defeated the chosen and saintesses of the barbarian race. Of course, there were also heaven prides of the 7 great forces that were killed by the chosen and saintesses. Therefore, those who rank at the top in the inner yard ranking battle will receive more rewards as preparation for heading to the 5-element zone. At the same time, the person who wins first place in the inner yard will become the leader of the disciples of the Sword Sex Pagoda Forest, Qiu Shan said in a clear voice. Hearing the word leader, the eyes of all the inner yard disciples lit up. The disciples present were all hot-blooded young men and women, who didn't want to become the leader and lead the inner yard of the Sword Sex Pagoda Forest to fight against the chosen and saintesses of the barbarian race. Of course, many inner yard disciples also knew that the real leader could only be chosen between Yan Wushuang and Bai Zichen. If Yi Jianzong didn't die, would he have the strength to fight for the leader position? An outer yard disciple said in disappointment. This caused the surrounding people to be speechless. If Yi Jianzong is still alive, with his strength, it would be difficult for him to win without taking the elixir, another person said. The story of Yi Guqin killing 100 people in the Void Sword realm had long been spread in the 7 great forces and even the Saint Origin dynasty. However, everyone knew that it was because he had taken the Mad Demon Burning Blood elixir and not Yi Guqin's strength. Even so, such a story made the blood of a group of outer yard disciples boil. They wished they could witness it with their own eyes, but obviously, they didn't think they had the chance. Before the start of the inner yard ranking battle, there's one more thing. It's the bet that Yi Guqin made with me, but he has fallen in the Void Sword realm. It's really a pity. He will always be a disciple of the Sword Sex Pagoda Forest, and his venerable cave dwelling will also belong to the Sword Sex Pagoda Forest. I will distribute the resources fairly, Qiu Shan said. However, right at this moment, a clear yet resolute voice suddenly resounded. I don't agree. As his words fell, the entire noisy square instantly fell into a deathly silence. It should be said that the person who reprimanded wasn't an inner yard disciple, nor an ordinary elder, but one of the 3 leaders of the Sword Sex Pagoda Forest. He was also an expert of the divine dwelling stage, Qiu Shan. Even with Qiu Shan's shrewdness, his face slowly froze. A young girl in an aqua-green gauze dress held the Aurora sword in her hand. Her face, which still had a trace of a young girl's innocence, contained a hint of determination. I, Mu Xingzu, am here today on behalf of senior brother Yi Guqin. I will use my sword to ask for a battle. No one can take away the venerable cave dwelling that belongs to senior brother Yi. As Mu Xingzu's words faded, a vast spirit pressure almost uncontrollably surged out. In terms of pressure, it wasn't much weaker than Yan Wushuang. Chapter 341. Feeling the pretty girl who was emitting a terrifying soul pressure. The surrounding group of disciples were all shocked. It's this Mu Xingzu. I heard that she obtained the greatest opportunity in the Void Sword realm. Yi Jianzong sacrificed himself in the end because he wanted to protect her. Hearing the gossip of the surrounding disciples, Mu Xingzu's face turned pale. Yi Guqin had died because of her. This was something that Mu Xingzu could never forgive herself for. Mu Xingzu, you actually dare to be so presumptuous in front of the Great Elder. Isn't that too outrageous? Bai Zichen took a step forward. He had the cultivation of the 8th transformation of the Divine Soul, so he was naturally not afraid of Mu Xingzu's pressure. That's right, Mu Xingzu. There's no room for you to be presumptuous here. Wang Xiaotian also took a step forward. Facing 2 of the top 3 in the inner yard, Mu Xingzu did not have the slightest intention of backing down. Her jade-like hand gripped the sword tightly. Qiu Shan looked deeply at Mu Xingzu. With his identity and status, it was naturally impossible for him to argue with Mu Xingzu. Mu Xingzu, you obtained a great opportunity in the Void Sword realm and can be considered a genius now. Although Yi Guqin's death is regrettable, it's already in the past. You have to walk out of it. Qiu Shan did not seem to be angry at Mu Xingzu's scolding as he slowly said. Hearing Qiu Shan's words of advice, the surrounding disciples once again admired the great elder's magnanimity. Mu Xingzu, today, I will replace senior brother Yi Guqin. If I am unable to obtain the top 5 in the inner yard, not only will I unconditionally give up the Venerable One's cave, Xingzhu will also withdraw from the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest and never take a step into the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest in this lifetime. It was almost the same oath as Yi Guqin that day, coming out of Mu Xingzu's mouth. Every word was powerful and resonant. At this moment, even Bai Zichen, Wang Xiaolan and the others were stunned, unable to speak. Mu Xingzu, you'd better think this through. Once you leave the protection of the Sword Sect's Pagoda Forest, with the fortuitous encounter you've obtained, you'll be doomed, Qiu Shan said calmly. Great Elder, please give Xingzhu a chance. Mu Xingzu said through gritted teeth. All right, I'll grant you that. Qiu Shan flicked his sleeves. After this voice sounded, the inner academy ranking battle officially began. Mu Xingzu stepped onto an arena covered with defensive formations. An inner court disciple stood on the opposite side of the arena. Ranked 72 in the inner courtyard, Wang Dong. Junior sister Xingzhu, please. The young man was quite courteous. Mu Xingzu, ranked 98 in the inner yard. Please enlighten me. Mu Xingzu shouted. Previously, she had only challenged a disciple ranked 98th. In other words, Mu Xingzu's current ranking was the 3rd from the bottom in the inner courtyard. From the 3rd from the bottom to the top 5, the gap was not ordinary. However, Mu Xingzu's bright eyes did not waver at all. As soon as the battle began, Mu Xingzu directly slashed across the sky with her sword. The young man did not even have time to react before the sharp sword was pressed against his neck. Wang Dong's face was blank. In any case, he was ranked 72 in the inner courtyard and had a cultivation base of the 3rd transformation of the godly soul. However, he could not even take one slash from Mu Xingzu. Mu Xingzu has become so strong? In the outer courtyard crowd, Qin Linner's face was filled with shock, and then a bitter smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. The young girl who could be teased by her back then had now left her far behind. All of this was because of Yi Guqin. Mu Xingzu's move had obviously shocked many people. Even Bai Zichen secretly frowned. In the next few battles, Mu Xingzu passed almost all of them. No one could withstand more than 10 moves from her. After a day of the ranking battle, Mu Xingzu, who was ranked 3rd from the bottom, directly rose to the 52nd place. However, The most terrifying thing was that Mu Xingzu had not completely revealed her strength. In addition, Yan Wushuang, Bai Zichen and the others did not make a move. This was because their opponents had directly admitted defeat with a bitter smile before the battle had even begun. Today's ranking battle has ended. Tomorrow, the ranking battle will have its final result, an elder said loudly. Feng Manlu, who was standing alone on the crown of an ancient pine tree, had a slightly complicated expression. The person he had been waiting for did not come. Is it really a foregone conclusion? Feng Manlu shook his head and sighed. On the first day of the ranking battle in the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest, in the demonic beast barren valley that was hundreds of miles away from the floating mountain. The valley that was originally filled with demonic beasts was already a bloody mess. The corpses of many Class 4 demonic beasts were scattered everywhere. Many cracks appeared on the ground, and the forest was destroyed. It was as if countless battles had erupted. Rumble! The shockwaves from the battles spread out like a tide. A figure with gorgeous fiery wings on his back soared into the sky. It was Yiguchen. At this moment his clothes were a little messy and he was panting. On the ground below him, a two-headed serpent was constantly roaring. A Class 5 demonic beast is indeed difficult to deal with. Yiguchen was slightly panting. However, if this scene was seen by others, they would definitely be shocked speechless. An ordinary Class 5 demonic beast was comparable to a human life and death chamber expert. In other words, Yiguchen was currently fighting with a life and death chamber expert. Fortunately, I have the vermilion bird wings. Even if I can't defeat it, I can still escape. However, this demonic beast's bloodline and demonic soul are useful to the five-colored golden core. It seems like I can only slowly whittle it down, Yiguchen thought. Although his current strength was somewhat strong, facing a Class 5 demonic beast head-on was still a little difficult. However, Yiguchen had the vermilion bird wings and an almost inexhaustible extreme chi-si. Therefore, Yiguchen would exhaust this Class 5 demonic beast to death even if he had to. 10,000 deities tribulation, destruction of heaven and earth. Yiguchen's fallen star soft sword soared into the sky, and the sword wings burst out from his back again. The pair of boundless and overbearing sword wings were even more powerful than before. With a sword strike, the powerful two-headed serpent let out a mournful roar. Boom, boom, boom. It took Yiguchen a whole day to kill the strongest demonic beast in the demonic beast desolate valley. With the cultivation of Divine Soul Realm, he killed a Class 5 demonic beast that was comparable to a life and death chamber expert. Although Yiguchen had the advantage in the air, if others knew, they would definitely be incomparably surprised. After that, Yiguchen directly absorbed the two-headed serpent's bloodline and demonic soul through the five-colored golden core. The Azure Dragon Totem, one of the five-colored totems, had its power increased again. Of course, the two-headed serpent was slightly weaker than the black dragon python, so the energy it provided was also limited. However, Yiguchen didn't care. With such accumulation, the five-colored totems would naturally awaken one day. I've wasted too much time. It's time to go back. That Qiushan probably can't wait to take my venerable cave mansion. Yiguchen's eyes were deep as he looked into the distance. The vermilion bird wings on his back unfolded again, and his body turned into a flaming meteor, flying towards the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.